Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
We are live on Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. So, Josh gave me the deuces, and I gave it back to him. Unlike when I leave at night and I give him, something, totally ignored every single time. Gentleman gives you a deuce. How hard is it to say, hey, I'll see you later, right? That's all I'm asking for. Hey, I'm leaving. I see you. Boom. That's how we start today on a Wednesday because there's a rain delay in Philly. Mickey Moniak put me to rest, right? Yesterday I ripped Moniak. I tweeted today and ripped him again. It wasn't really a rip, but it was, kind of. All I said was Nick Maton looks more poised, and no one's ever actually heard of him. And he looks more poised than Moniak does. And I said in the tweet, I hope Moniak proves me wrong. He had an opposite field 3-run bomb, and the Phillies lead 3-0. Mickey Moniak with his first Major League Baseball home run. Phillies lead 3-0. They're in a rain delay, so which gives us a good opportunity to kind of start with the Eagles and today's press conference. Kind of an last minute, like they announced yesterday, we're going to have a press conference today. So they tried to sneak that in there, but you can't sneak that past anybody. There's a lot to unpack here. I mean, a lot to unpack. I will start with this. Nick Sirianni was the star of the show. That tells you about what you need to know about the press conference today. You might be saying, wait, what? What'd he do? If you live in just a Twitter world, I'm surprised that rock, paper, scissors isn't trending right now. And it might be. I haven't looked. But I feel like the only thing that is being talked about is the fact that Nick Sirianni said that he challenges his draft prospects to rock, paper, scissors to find out how competitive they actually are. And it just has just taken off. I mean, it has just gotten out of control. But Sirianni actually took over the press conference, and people are kind of ripping him. I kind of liked it. I mean, he was like, you know what? I feel pretty comfortable. Roseman, I got this. I was thinking about it in this light. Could you imagine if Bill Belichick had never coached before, and in the year 2021, he got hired and had his introductory press conference and was Bill Belichick? He would be massacred. But because he's Bill Belichick and has a history of being Bill Belichick, he can go up there and mumble his way through with the enthusiasm of an elephant. And Nick Sirianni goes up there and we kind of look at him. I don't know what to expect from this guy. I don't know what to think. I thought today was refreshing. I mean, we ripped him for his opening press conference, and now he goes to the other side of the spectrum and people are ripping him. Who the hell cares? He was up there having a blast. He was like, dude, this is fun. I'm getting to talk about football. For the first time, I get a chance to sit up here and talk football. This is great. There was one point of the press conference where Sirianni, Roseman gets asked a question about what kind of wide receiver are they targeting? What do they want to find another X receiver? And Roseman just said, Sirianni, you got this one. Because at the point of it was, it was almost as if Roseman said, this guy's going to take my job. So you might as well answer this question. He was asked about the X receiver and finding that X receiver, if that's what are they looking for? Sirianni.
What does an X receiver look like? Well, I've had different X's. I've had T.Y. Hilton, who was 5'9", 180 pounds. He played X for us. I've had Dwayne Bowe, who was 6'2", 220 pounds. He played X for us. I had Keenan Allen, who was 6'3", 200. And all these guys that I'm saying, T.Y. was fast. Keenan was quick, not fast. Dwayne Bowe was powerful. They all played different. So it's just a matter of can that guy do what you want that person to do on that outside? Can he? And really, when you say X, it's can he win one-on-one matchups consistently?
Sirianni explaining, I loved it. When he got to talking about the football side of stuff, you could hear the passion, but he made a lot of sense. He's like, you guys have this X position guy mapped out in your head. But I've used T.Y. Hilton, 5'9". I've used Dwayne Bowe, who, by the way, Dwayne Bowe was, chiseled out like a Hulkamania. 6'2". He had muscles on top of muscles. He was like David Boston. You remember David Boston? That was Dwayne Bowe. He talked about Odell Beckham. He said, you guys have this vision of what an X receiver is. It could be anybody. I love that answer from Sirianni. And I love the fact that Roseman just deferred to him. Hey, you want to answer this question on the wide receiver that you're looking for? There you go. Sirianni, there was a point in the press conference today where he kind of said, look, guys, I just want to jump in. I'm having so much fun with this. Like, you guys will see the preparation that I put in for a week to get ready for a game. And now I'm getting to see that from the personnel side. They're doing all this preparation to get ready for the season. I mean, he was genuinely excited about the fact that the team was getting ready, like how it all kind of, the analogy from game planning to draft planning. This guy's all in with this team.
All the work, like if you think you're just going to call a play when the 40-second clock starts to tick down, you're crazy, right? You ain't going to do that. You did all the work prior to on Monday through Saturday to get ready for Sunday. It's the same thing. It's just a longer process with the draft, which I think is so cool because Howie can kind of put himself in my shoes and I can put myself in Howie's shoes. I think it's awesome.
It was at that point there where the whole thing he's like, I put myself in your shoes, you put yourself in my shoes. And it was at that point that he essentially took over the press conference. Like that was where it kind of started, where Sirianni for like the first 10, 15 minutes, he didn't say a word. Not one word. And then he just got going, and then he didn't stop. And I'm looking at the social media reaction to that today, and I'm thinking, why? This guy was great. If it was Belichick, yeah, well, we're looking for an X receiver. Well, we're looking for a guy built like, there's a lot of them out there. You guys would be blasting him. This guy came in with energy, passion. There's one thing that I want from my coach, right? Is he giving me 100%? Like Doug Peterson, we ripped sometimes because he sounded all shucksy. He won a Super Bowl. And then after that, well, he said stuff that he shouldn't. Look, what these guys say and don't say, that doesn't matter. But all I know is Sirianni's giving me 110% every day of the week. And I can't ask for much more than that. I can't ask, like, sight unseen. I have no idea what kind of head coach he's going to be. All I can feel right now is that the Philadelphia Eagles players will love playing for this guy. That's my initial take. Now, my initial take when he first was up there was, he might be a little in over his head. Maybe he's just a young guy and doesn't know what he got himself into. I'm in this now, and I'm thinking he probably feels so much more comfortable just being in that building now for the last 2 months. That came out today is, all right, my first day, I'm on the job, I'm answering the questions, I'm trying to do the right. Now I'm in the building for, when you first get that job, that first day you sit down and you're like, all right, where's the bathroom? Where's the door? How do I get in? How do I get out? Where do I park? Who can I talk to? Who's worth talking to? Who's not going to talk to me? You have all these things. You're trying to feel out your new surroundings. By 3 weeks in, you feel pretty comfortable. You know your way around the building. You know where you want to go. You know all your routines. That was Nick Sirianni today. Nick Sirianni got there the first day and felt a little nervous. Now, this time he spoke, he has felt his way around the building and he knows his way around. And guess what? He feels pretty comfortable. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. If you're watching the show live, hit me up on the live chat. If you're watching the show over there, we'll get your comments up on the screen. If you're listening on the radio, of course, the text board is always open for you, 609-403-0973. There were a couple of things that Howie Roseman said that we have to get into as well. And one of them was on getting the call from the Dolphins. He was asked basically, period, point blank. It was a Jeff McClain question, so it was pretty direct. Howie, why did you trade from number 6 to number 12 was essentially the question. Not essentially, that was the question. He just came right out and said, why did you make that trade? What was the reason behind it?
When we get the call and we're having the discussions with Miami, and we got to figure out who they're trading with to be able to answer their question whether we would move back. And so once we found out that it was San Francisco, we knew that 3 quarterbacks were going to be off the board in the first 3 picks. So it allowed us even to lock in even more on who the guys would be that would be available at 12.
See, that there gives me a lot. He says, I make that trade because 3 quarterbacks are going off the board. That means 3 guys that we like just got pushed closer to us, which means they have a guy in mind, or 2 or 3 that they have in mind that said, you know what? We feel comfortable if we can get that guy at 12, that we can get a guy that we like at 12, because it literally came out and said it. We wanted to find out who the trade was with. When we found out San Francisco moving to 3, we know 3 quarterbacks are off the board. That tells you all you need to know, that Philadelphia had a group of guys that they felt very comfortable with if they get that guy at number 12, because they know that there are 9 players that are going to be at their disposal, because they're not drafting a quarterback. Well, we'll get to that in just a bit, because maybe they will draft a quarterback. I think it's being blown out of proportion. The way they answered this question didn't help the thing, the narrative. I just feel like Sirianni is trying to build a competition. Heck, he talked about playing rock, paper, scissors. So people are like, oh, he's starting a quarterback controversy. Adam Schefter tweeted, Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni declined today to name Hurts his starting quarterback and said it will be an open competition. Hello, did you not also hear the part where he said that he's trying to compete with people in rock, paper, scissors, and Jeopardy? The theme of the whole program is competition. Does that mean that Fletcher Cox is battling it out for the starting defensive tackle job? Obviously not. But he doesn't want to come out and name anybody a starter. He wants it to happen on the field. And I don't have a problem with that, but I understand it's going to say, whoa, he doesn't trust the quarterback. He doesn't believe in the quarterback. They're going to have a quarterback competition. So Roseman today, I thought, was pretty clear that they moved back because 3 quarterbacks were getting drafted. If 3 quarterbacks aren't getting drafted in the top 3, I don't know that he makes that trade. Because if, let's say, for instance, we talk about drafting on need versus best player available, and this is why I think the best player available thing sometimes gets flawed. Mac Jones is not a better player than Kyle Pitts, but he's going to get drafted ahead of him. He's not the best player available. He's the player that they think they need. Because if the best player availables were getting drafted, it would be Trevor Lawrence 1, Kyle Pitts 2, Penei Sewell probably 3, Jamar Chase probably 4. So you're not getting your guy at number 6 potentially. Because I got news for you. Mac Jones is not one of the best 6 players in this draft class. But because teams aren't drafting the best player available, they're drafting because they think they need a quarterback. The Eagles had the flexibility. Roseman talked about that today.
Well, the reason we traded back from 6 to 12 was because flexibility creates opportunity. And for us, having an extra first-round pick, when you go back and look at things that are hard to acquire, that's one of the hardest things to acquire is a team's first-round pick in the following year and to move back 6 spots.
The flexibility creates trading back creates flexibility. You know, it is almost the Howie, the Sam Henke book. You know, we get more assets. We have more options. We can now make mistakes. They have built-in mistakes, essentially. I know people don't like to hear that because they think every pick Roseman makes is a mistake. But the more that you add means the more cracks you get at it. And as I've said before, yeah, Henke made mistakes, but he also got Joel Embiid. And why? He had 2 picks in the 13 draft. He had 2 picks in the 14 draft, multiple picks in multiple drafts, and they found their guy. Football's a little different. You need to find multiple guys. You can't just find one. But as Roseman said today, he talked about it today. We have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds of next year's draft. And we're excited about that. So they understand where they are. I thought it was interesting, too. Somebody asked Andy Weidel about how they have Vera Tucker and Rashawn Slater. Where do they have them listed as, tackles or guards? Because those 2 guys are both players who played guard and tackle in college. Vera Tucker actually played tackle last year. He was an all-conference guard the year before at USC. So he played right guard and he played left tackle. So Andy Weidel was asked. He would not give that information up. But they did kind of talk about Isaac Seumalo. And this is an interesting comment because I saw a mock draft last night. Who's the guy from Good Morning Football? Peter Schrager. He has his mock draft up for NFL.com, and he has the Eagles trading back to 15 and taking Vera Tucker. Could you imagine the sound of the boos that would come ringing in if the Eagles traded back to 15 and took an offensive lineman? I can't even envision. I don't think Eagle fans are going to make the trip to Cleveland. I don't know what the fan situation is because of the COVID. I don't know if fans are going to be allowed at the draft. But let's just imagine if this was at, the Art Museum in Philadelphia, and the 12th pick, Roger Goodell got up there and said, "We have a trade. The New England Patriots have traded with the Philadelphia Eagles and have acquired the 12th pick." And then the 3 picks later, the Eagles were on the clock. And with the 15th pick, the Eagles have selected an offensive guard. Holy mackerel. But guess what? Wouldn't shock me at all. And in the trade, Peter Schrager gives the Eagles an extra 2nd-round pick in this year's draft. So you would have the 1st-round pick number 15, your own 2nd-round pick number 37, the Patriots' 2nd-round pick, I believe, which was number 47, plus 2 3rd-round picks. You are now getting 5 players in the top 90 of this year's draft and 4 players in the top 60 of next year's draft. You're talking about 9 players in the first 2 days of the draft in 2 straight years. But listen to what Roseman said today when asked about Isaac Seumalo.
Isaac gives us tremendous flexibility to take the best player at either of those 2 spots because he does have the ability to be a good starting center. Obviously, we've seen him play guard. So having a guy like that allows us to not force either of those 2 positions.
Right. So I thought that was interesting. They talked about him being a starting center. They have Kelsey back. This kind of tells me that when Kelsey's done, Seumalo's the heir apparent to play center for this team, right? Which means if we're looking at him as a center next season, we might need to find someone to replace him. What better way to get someone to replace him by adding an extra pick this year and picking that guy at number 15? So that comment there, coupled with the fact that a guy like Rashawn Slater and Vera Tucker both can play multiple positions. So for their first years in the league, they can move up and down the line. Hey, we'll cross-train you at guard and in tackle. So you are kind of that backup guy, and if somebody gets hurt, we got a first-rounder that can go in there and play. And if no one gets hurt, we have a great addition to our offensive line next season. That comment by Howie Roseman today made me feel that it's a more of a possibility that they could, in fact, trade back, and they could, in fact, take an offensive lineman. What say you? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. I thought there was a lot to unpack from that, and we will. We got more sound bites from today's presser. Did you like Nick Sirianni today? I had no problem with Nick Sirianni. I thought he was great. He was the star of the show for me. I was like, this guy's real. He's fun. We're going to have Bill Belichick. And I'm sure you're saying, well, Bill Belichick won all those Super Bowls. Yeah, but if he never coached a game and talked like that, you would be ripping him today. So let's not judge people on how they react to questions and pressers. And by the way, I thought the whole rock, paper, scissors thing, he was having some fun. He even said to the guy who asked the question, hey, I might even have a challenge with you there. And I don't think that guy really even understood. Les Bowen was kind of like, well, okay. I mean, it was the guy just trying to have some fun. Brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. Matt Blatt Kia, they want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. I'll read off your text. I see your comments on the video stream. If you're watching the show live, hit me up over there. You see the guest lineup on the screen. Jason Fitz, Paul Hudrick, Geoff Mosher, Jeff Kerr, and at 2:45, Jeremy Boyd. The Phillies made a roster move today. They had to put Gene Segura on the injured list. How long could that linger? Because that could be a problem. Back with more Sports Bash. He was the one guy hitting in the lineup. Back with more Sports Bash coming up next. Yeah, I suggest watching the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you can't, you can listen on the radio, of course, but you can always pull us up on your cell phone, laptop, smart TV, wherever you watch anything, you can see the Sports Bash live. All right, I got a lot of comments coming in. I got a lot of text messages coming in. So I was talking about need against best player available. Today, Howie Roseman said something that I thought, when asked about the, why they made this deal, what about this deal was intriguing for them on getting that call from the Miami Dolphins. What were some of the things that he kind of analyzed when this trade came about, when the Miami Dolphins called him? He said this.
When we get the call and we're having the discussions with Miami, and we got to figure out who they're trading with to be able to answer their question whether we would move back. And so once we found out that it was San Francisco, we knew that 3 quarterbacks were going to be off the board in the first 3 picks. So it allowed us even to lock in even more on who the guys would be that would be available at 12.
So he says, we knew that when it was San Francisco, that 3 quarterbacks would be off the board. And that tells me, Howie Roseman, that there's 9 guys that are getting pushed back because we're not taking a quarter. So he said 2 things that really kind of stick out here. And this is why the Hurts stuff, don't read into it. Hurts is the quarterback. He just said 3 quarterbacks there. If they wanted a quarterback to compete with Hurts, they wouldn't have taken into account that 3 quarterbacks were going to be off the board so that they can move out, right? So if you're looking at, this is Dane Brugler from The Athletic. He does a really good job on the draft, and he does his big board, 300 big board. Number 1, Trevor Lawrence. Number 2, Kyle Pitts. Number 3, Zach Wilson. This is best players available. Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, Jalen Waddle, Trey Lance, number 7, which I think is a little high. Number 8, Justin Fields. Number 9, Devonta Smith. Number 10, Patrick Surtain. Number 11, Rashawn Slater. Number 12, Micah Parsons. Number 13, Ali Vera Tucker. Number 14, J.C. Horn. So part of what I'm saying here is you're telling me, or Howie Roseman was saying, you're telling him that guys that are ranked number 8 and number 7 on this big board are essentially going to be going 1, 2, and 3, which means 2, 4, 5, they're all moving back towards me at number 12. And therein lies why they make this deal. If they wanted to get a quarterback, they probably stay at number 6 because they're concerned. They said, well, we know 3 quarterbacks are going to go. If we want to be in that quarterback game, it's much easier for us to get the one that we like, unless now they like the 4th one or the 5th one. So I don't think that the quarterback's in play at number 12. 2 things I think are in play at number 12 from listening to today's press conference. An offensive lineman, and I know people aren't going to want to hear that, but the offensive lineman I definitely think is now in play. That I think is in play. And the other thing, this is interesting here too. This was one of the first questions in the press conference today. It kind of got swept under the rug a little bit because of all the other wonkiness that was going on when asked about last year. And listen to what he says, or doesn't say, really.
Yeah, we learned a lot about the process last year. Obviously unique the first time that we're doing all of these on Zoom, and there are a lot of lessons learned. And I think where we are right now is just excited about the teamwork that we had throughout this process with the coaches, with the scouts, with our front office, and move for there to make sure that we have a tremendous draft this year. You know, the book hasn't been written on last year's draft either. So excited for those guys to get with Coach and his staff.
All right, couple things. I feel like at the end there, we're excited for those guys to get with Coach and his staff. It seemed to me that Roseman said the book's not closed on those guys, and we're looking forward to a new staff to get with them, Was he not insinuating that the older staff did not do a very good job with the players that they drafted for him last year? In other words, hey, I got you Jalen Reagor, but you used him like crap. You wanted me to get you a speed receiver. I got you one, and you didn't utilize his speed. I kind of took that as a little bit of a shot at the old coaching staff. Maybe that's just me reading a little too much into it. 2, he kind of insinuated that the draft was challenging because of the fact that, if you remember, no one's in the same room last year. You're on Zoom. And if any of you have been on Zoom calls or whatever kind of calls you're on, Teams, Zoom, whatever you use, it's not the easiest to have some good back and forth, especially if you're passionate about something. The little box goes moving back and forth on who's talking, and then you kind of give up. So who knows how much that draft pick last year was debated and talked about back and forth. But as who's this? Uzi Wolf is checking in, watching on YouTube, says definitely sounded like a slight shot to the old staff. That's how I kind of read it too. Right? That's how I kind of read it, was that, hey, we took these guys last year. The book's not out on them, but we're really excited for our new staff to get their hands on these guys. And keep in mind, Nick Sirianni has a background as what? Wide receiver coach. How many receivers did the Eagles draft last year? 3. So when I say, if you're following me on Twitter, at Mike Gill Show, I thought we got some interesting clues on the draft. 1, the stuff about Sayamala. I definitely think you can read some clues on that. That offensive line is in play. 2, they drafted 3 wide receivers last year. He took a little shot at the old staff saying, I can't wait for the new staff to get their hands on these guys. So maybe wide receivers not as high on their list as maybe all of us think out there. And that could be one of the reasons why they moved from 6 to 12. Hey, we'll move back to 12. We really want a corner. We really want an offensive lineman. And I think if they stay at 12, they go corner. If they get a call and get a deal they like, they will move back and take an offensive lineman. Those are the scenarios that I got out of today's press conference. What did you take from it? 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Text board is open. Continue to comment on the video side. Jeff Bone and Pookie makes an interesting point. Says the fact that Jeffrey Lurie let Nick Sirianni answer the questions about wide receivers speaks volumes. I think that's an interesting point. When the question was directed at Roseman, kind of, and Roseman kind of deferred to Sirianni on that question about the X receiver and what you're looking for out of a X receiver. Uzi Wolf makes another good point. Everyone is acting like the Eagles are in this horrific situation. Not if you listen to this show. I don't think they're in this horrific situation. I think they're in a pretty solid situation to turn this thing around pretty quickly. If they miss, they're in trouble. But I think they're in a pretty good spot. If they hit on some of these picks in the next 2 years, they can turn this thing around pretty quickly. And quite frankly, I don't even think that they're in that bad of shape this year if the offensive line's healthy. I've been on record saying that. He goes on to say, I think this rebuild will be far faster than people think. The Birds will be competitive pretty fast. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Now, it's all contingent on pick 12 or whatever that pick ends up being. I think pick 37 is pretty important. I think the 2 picks in the 3rd round, you have to have 2 of those 4 players have to be highly participating this year, and you need more from last year's draft. I got to have Jalen Reagor around 850 yards this year. I'm not asking for a 1,200-yard guy, but he's got to be more productive. And I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, I think Davion Taylor is going to get out there and help this team out. But I think you also need to get another player from that draft class that plays regularly. And you're looking at, you're going to have Jalen Hurts. So Rager, big jump from last year. And I'm not even saying huge. I'm not 300 and whatever yards last year. I mean, I guess I'm saying I want him to double that production, but to go from about 400 yards to about 850, I'm not asking all that much. So your first round pick next from last year, your second round pick is going to start. I need either Hightower or Watkins to be a part of the offense because I don't have faith in Kayvon Wallace. I don't think Jack Driscoll is going to be needed. And if he is, that's a problem. And I don't see Davion Taylor and Sean Bradley. So I think those guys are more depth players. So really it's between Davion Taylor, Kayvon Wallace, and the two receivers, Hightower and Watkins. I think if you can get, you got Rieger, you got Hurts. You need a third guy from that draft class last year to help this team out. And Davion Taylor, by the way, as a third-round pick, he has got to help at some point. Couple more comments coming in. 609-403-0973. Jalen Heels says the question about Hurts is irrelevant for sure. No one should be named the quarterback starter at this point. And he said only had 2 days with the players. Not an issue. The Schefter tweet was deceptive. Let's be honest. Jalen Hurts is not backing up Joe Flacco. So if the current situation is what it is, don't worry about it. The only thing that you would say is if they drafted a quarterback at number 12. I don't think that's happening. I could be wrong. I don't think so. So if that's the case, there's not a competition. It's all just window dressing. It's all window dressing. 609-403-0973. Couple more. Mike, the Eagles are going through a rebuild, and a wide receiver is not a cornerstone position. It's an extra when the house is already built. Left tackle, defensive end, corner are foundation positions. You need to turn over the roster and get younger. I agree with a lot of that. The wide receiver to me is a luxury. I'm not the guy that pounds the drum that you need wide receivers. I am more than okay with letting Nick Sirianni work with Rieger and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Travis Fulgham. I think they need a better player than that somewhere down the road. I don't think it has to be at number 6, or it didn't have to be at number 6, and it doesn't have to be at number 12. Left tackle, I'm comfortable with Jordan Mailata playing left tackle. I don't need to bring in another left tackle. They've got a guy who's 6'8" and 350 pounds who just mauls people. I don't need another left tackle. Defensive end, it's a position that this team constantly drafts. Barnett, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. And they've done a good job at drafting Vic Curry. They've done a good job at drafting defensive ends. It's a position that we know they value. The spot that they have struggled, corner. They have got to get a guy at corner. And that's what I just said. If they stay at 12, I think they stay at corner. They move back, I think it's because they want an offensive lineman. They're the foundation pieces. I think Lane Johnson, people are like, you got to turn this roster over and get younger. Lane Johnson's going to be here. I would imagine he's going to be your right tackle for another 4 years. I don't know what his contract, I got to pull up his contract situation. But I think Lane Johnson is probably going to be your right tackle for 3-4 more years. I think Brandon Brooks, same thing. I can't imagine they're looking to get rid of those guys just solely based on their age. If they have contracts. I'm not saying they're going to get re-signed or re-upped, but I think they have contracts that would suggest that they're going to be here. All right, coming up, speaking of injuries, we're going to talk about Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, those injuries. Coming up next with our guy Jeremy Boyd from Trifecta Therapeutics. Should those guys be ready? What's the turnaround time? Should we be concerned about re-injury? Age and those injuries, how do they factor in? Plus, Gene Segura on the injured list. Quad strain. How long should he be out for? That's a big one. He was hitting about 350. Phillies game's back. They're up 3-0. We'll give you the details. Don't go away. Sports Bash Live. right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, we've been talking a lot of Eagles. We had Lane Johnson on the show about a week or so ago. He talked about his injury. I want to ask Dr. Jeremy Boyd about that. We had an injury last night in the Phillies game that I want more information on, plus Brandon Brooks and his injury. And that's from my guys over at Trifecta Therapeutics, the premier sports rehab performance center in South Jersey. If you can hear my voice, you can get to Glassboro. If you're tired of being in pain, you know it's nice outside, you're playing basketball in the driveway, you might start throwing that baseball around with your son, and you know what? Your arm doesn't feel as good, or your ankle hurts, or your knees start to bother you. Well, you can check the guys out at Trifecta Therapeutics, and they can tell you whether it's just something minor or something that you need to take a further look at. Weekend warrior, finely tuned athlete. Trifecta helps the pros and the Joes. So don't settle for less. Check out Trifecta Therapeutics to schedule your free discovery session right now. Use code ESPN Radio at trifectatherapeutics.com or call today. All right, so let's take a look and unpack some of these injury situations that are going on, and we'll bring Dr. Jeremy Boyd into the conversation for that. And he joined us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Doc, welcome back, man. How you doing?
Not too bad. Having a good old time. How you doing?
All is well. Now, we're in the off season here, but a lot of news with the Eagles came out today, which kind of got me thinking when I saw that they were going to be speaking. I said, I want to get a little update on what we think could be happening here with some of these guys. Now, Lane Johnson was on with me about 2 weeks ago. He said he has been cleared. Now, he is 4 months removed from December surgery, but he had some interesting problems with that. He had that tightrope surgery. So if you can kind of give our listeners a little insight on what that kind of means, that sidelined him for 4 to 5 months. He had the surgery back in November, late November, like November 27th. So would that surgery tell you that he should be good and ready? Because, you know, people are saying, well, he's old. He can't stay healthy. So what do you think when you see a guy, 30 years old who's had that ankle surgery?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously with the age factor, it's going to be, and his position of line, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenging factor, but he seems ready to go, you know, from what I spoke with you about things a couple weeks ago. That tightrope fixation surgery, it's for these high ankle sprains and, you know, just to kind of tighten things up. It's exactly how it sounds in a sense. So after these sprains, pretty much there's a connection between your two shin bones, your tibia and your fibula. And when they keep reoccurring or we keep getting some injuries to them, it kind of loosens up. So it makes it easier and easier to potentially have these type of injuries. So this tightrope procedure, it kind of tightens it down so it doesn't keep taking the athlete out of the game. So it is more of a aggressive procedure. Your foot ankle surgeries take a little bit longer due to how far your ankle is essentially from your heart. So healing timelines are a little bit lengthened. But, you know, if he puts in all the good work, they get all the range of motion. It's good that I believe it happened November 27th or so. So, he's a couple months out. He has a couple months to go. It is, hopefully he can come back from that. It sounds like he is.
Well, this is what he said. This was about 2 weeks ago when he was with us. He said it was a tightrope procedure in the beginning, but I needed a deltoid repair, which is the inside ligament of your ankle. He said that was torn. He tried playing on it as much as he could, and he got the surgery on December the 7th. So that deltoid repair, the inside ligament, that was torn. So what is that, a red flag?
Yeah, I mean, being that the deltoid ligament, that would be what we call a medial ankle sprain, which is super rare. Most individuals were pretty have good understanding of a lateral ankle sprain or just rolling your ankle really bad. To have enough force to sprain and then further tear the deltoid ligament, that's one of the strongest ligaments in your body. It's a group of 3 ligaments, so that's why it's a deltoid and everything like that. That's a little bit more serious of a procedure, and that's going to take some more time to recover. So it's just more complicated all over the place, and now you have back-to-back procedures kind of lined up, and it'll take more time to recover. But again, these guys are the warrior mentalities, are for good rehabilitation, good docs and everything like that. They, hopefully he makes a full recovery.
Now, if I say to you, hey, he had those two, and you're, treating him, would you be, I don't know that he's making it through a 16-game season recovering from that, or if he's recovered, the re-injury factor should not be there?
I believe, for just about, most things, unfortunately, especially these more advanced procedures for orthopedic surgeries, there's always going to be a slight increased risk of any injury. And we got to look also beyond things to the knee, to the hip, especially with the ankle. So when we see limitations in the ankle, just let's say from scar tissue from the surgery, there's now probably prolonged periods both times where he's been in a boot or a cast. I know the specifics of those sort of things. That's going to lead to some limitations in motion. And we can see some, compensations are making up at the knee and some other areas. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't kind of come back to full form. We just know this with any of our sports statistics, the likelihood of lost time in games or missed games and seasons after major orthopedic procedures, ACLs, Achilles tendons, it kind of goes up. So hopefully he can push through for a whole season, but with his age and the multiple procedures, I'd think that he may lose some time here and there.
All right. One more real quick I want to get in is Brandon Brooks, who had the Achilles injury for the second time. This is the second time he's done this, but he did practice last year. December 30th, he was practicing. He did not play. He got injured before the season started. He's 31 years old, has 2 Achilles tear. But, man, I don't know if you've seen him. He's in tremendous shape. But when you hear a guy with a torn left Achilles, and he had a torn Achilles, I believe, his right Achilles before the 2018 season, at 31 years old, what's your take on his ability to stay healthy with those 2 injuries?
Yeah, and now it's, I believe, his left for this time around. So I haven't seen him. I haven't got to, I was trying to look and see any videos of him or anything like that. They're kind of restricted here and there. But the fact that he's out there, he seems like he's moving pretty good. That's always a great sign. Achilles tendon reoccurrences, once they kind of anchor them down, the likelihood of injuries to that Achilles seem to be less than compared, let's say, our ACLs, where the re-injury rate seems to be a lot higher, just due to the fixation of how they anchor that Achilles tendon up. They kind of stick it down there, they screw it in, and it seems pretty secure for most individuals. But you do see a lot of these Achilles tendon repairs because it's such a long rehab, and it's a prolonged period in a boot where, again, these kind of compensations happen. Like, look at both Kevin Durant. He's kind of going through some issues into some other areas. We have a couple other basketball players who also same thing, where they recovered from their Achilles, but now they got a couple things like hamstring strains or actually ACL injuries. So that wouldn't surprise me that, especially how difficult his position is.
All right. One last quickie on last night. We had the injury to Gene Segura. He got placed on the injured list today with a quad strain. I know those things are tricky, but those things, right quad strain, he's another older guy, 31 years old. Is that a 10-day injury? Is that something that lingers a little longer?
Yeah, it really depends on the grade. I think he did go for an MRI, so that's showing that it's not, just your latest, he just a quick little strain. If it is a grade 1, so that's our lightest of grades, he can be back within a 2-week time frame. He starts getting into a grade 2, which is that kind of medium level of strains. We can be thinking of around the 1 month marker to 6 weeks. So usually, when you have the big bad wolf, which is a grade 3, we know you're out for a while for that. So probably anywhere from that 2 to 4 week marker. Sometimes people fall in between grades. So hopefully it's more on that grade 1, just kind of strain it, let the systems back up, get back in the game.
Yeah, he's Dr. Jeremy Boyd from Trifecta Therapeutics. There you go. We broke down a couple of the key injuries that are happening locally. Lane Johnson, that's one to keep an eye on with that ankle injury, that deltoid ligament there. So, Doctor, we appreciate, of course, always filling our listeners in on some of the key injuries there. That Segura stuff will be interesting. I didn't see the grade, but I know he's certainly out, and we appreciate your time, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Dr. Jeremy Boyd, Trifecta Therapeutics. And again, if you are in the area, something just doesn't feel right, get a little discovery session so they can just feel it out, see what it is. Post-op treatment, pain relief, and more. I see people posting on these Facebook communities all the time. Where should I go? Give Dr. Jeremy Boyd and the people at Trifecta an opportunity to take a look at you. And use the code ESPN Radio for your evaluation on their website, trifectatherapeutics.com. All right, it's pouring rain out there, it feels like. I feel like it's just absolutely pouring right now. So let's get into it. Jason Fitz on the other side, Paul Hudrick next hour. Geoff, Mosher, and I will have a big football at 4 today. Hey, if you're watching the show live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, do me a favor. Hit the share button, hit the like button from wherever you're watching. Do it now. I ask you, please, do it now. I'll be back with more Sports Bash. As we return to you on a Wednesday edition, I think the apocalypse just came down. It might be done by now, but it was pretty crazy outside for about 5 minutes there. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Download the app on your phone and watch the Sports Bash Live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We are live, of course, with the video stream. I like this comment from Bruce, who's watching. It says, I think Vera Tucker and Slater. By the way, his last name is Vera-Tucker. His first name is Allie Vera Tucker. Just a lot easier to say, Vera Tucker. So Vera Tucker and Slater are definitely in play at 12. It seems Slater would start at guard and have Isaac as a nice backup who could fill in, play every offensive line position. Well, I don't think Sayamala plays. He does play a little tackle. I guess he did play a little tackle, but yeah, you might be right on that. Maybe they just view Sayamala as the backup center or the heir apparent at center. But I think you're right, Bruce. I'm not an advocate of drafting an offensive lineman, but I'm just telling you what I think that they're thinking, and I think you're right. I think that 12, put it this way, I will say this. I don't think they want to draft a lineman at 12. I think they want to draft that lineman deeper. Say 15, say deeper than that. So I agree with you there. I don't think they want to take the offensive lineman at 12. I think they want to get even more value and move back because I think they can get Slater at 15. And that would be the New England Patriots spot. Jay says, by the way, Mike, Sirianni is trending number 5 on Twitter. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I figure the whole Philadelphia, South Jersey, Delaware Valley region has tweeted out Sirianni's name already by now. But I think Bruce is definitely right. I definitely think Bruce is right. And I said this earlier. Like, he made the comment about Sayamala. They made the comment about Vera Tucker and Slater. They were asked directly about those two players. And it made me feel that offensive line is definitely in play. It made me definitively feel that offensive line is definitely in play. And I'm not giving credence to say that these mock drafts are gold, but what I think is, a guy like Peter Schrager works for the NFL Network. He's pretty plugged in. I mean, those guys have sources that they put those mock drafts together based on the sourcing that they have. So he has to have some thought process that the Eagles would be listening to a trade with New England to move back to 15. And then, see, it's one thing to move back to 15. And if he said, oh, you land the wide receiver that you wanted at 6 and you get him at 15. No. That's not what he said. He said, you move back to 15, you add another second-round pick, and you get the best offensive lineman, not the best offensive lineman, but you get one of the top offensive linemen in the draft. I think Penei Sewell is highly regarded as the best, or widely, I should say, regarded as the best offensive lineman in this draft. But I think there are some people who say, look, he's the best tackle, but these other guys are more versatile offensive linemen. And Howie Roseman talked about today about, and I think it was Andy Weidel who actually talked about it and said about how the ability, man, I'm trying to remember exactly the phrase that he said, and it kind of stood out to me. But Weidel said that having this wearing multiple hats, essentially, being able to wear multiple hats was a big key, and it was definitely a reason why they would value you more, that you have more value if you can play more positions. That was definitely something Weidel brought up, and it was in a direct answer to the question about Vera Tucker and Rashawn Slater. And is it both of those guys play multiple positions? Both of those guys play guard and tackle. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Andy Weidel was also asked an interesting question. Andy Weidel, who's like their head scout. And what's that? Yeah, he replaced Joe Douglas. So he's the Joe Douglas. He's like their head of this football. He's the head of the football guy side. Right? He's the football guy side. And then, of course, you have your analytics side. Andy Weidel talked about how they adjusted the coaching staff and how they kind of adjusted their model for this year's draft.
Adjusting with the new coaching staff, and our staff is as well, and finding players that fit the program that Nick's establishing here, and how we're an extension of the coaching staff, ultimately the scouts, and we want to go out and find the players that best fit this program. They're going to come in and hit the ground and go.
I like how he really did say, though, that this is Nick's program. Like, I feel like, does it feel to you guys out there the way it feels to me is that they're putting a lot of stock in Nick Sirianni and his program and what he's preaching and what he wants to do and what he wants to accomplish, right? I never really heard them say, we want to find the players that Doug wants. I could be wrong about that, but I don't really remember them ever taking into account, hey, these are the guys that fits Doug's system. But it feels to me like they are really saying, we got to find guys for Nick. We got to find, and I thought Sirianni brought up a really good point. I don't know if we have that bite either, but he talked about how all right, so he's telling the media about he finds guys and then he has the tape and he'll call Howie Roseman and the scouts in and say, see what this guy does? This is what I want to, this is how I see him in my offense. And he basically had like a list of guys that he's like, you see what these guys are doing. This is how they would fit into our situation. This is how I would use them if they were in our building and if I had them here. I thought Sirianni really did a good job today. I know he was very high energy and he was, a little here's the bite that everybody is kind of talking about today that has people just up in arms. I don't know why. I mean, I thought it was a playful comment that he was having some fun with, and he was just basically, trying to give an example of the fact that he wants a competitive environment inside the locker room.
I played a couple of them at rock, paper, scissors, right? That was as easy as that. Rock, paper, scissors. Let's see how competitive you are. I'm competitive. I'm going to be talking trash to him. Did you talk trash back to me? Right? Jeopardy. There's different ways to do it. It looks a lot of different ways, but our coaches got so creative with this. Like Jeff Stoutland, Brian Johnson, like they did just such. Aaron Moorhead. They all did a great job, right? Tracy Rocker, Jeremiah Washburn. They all did a great job of just figuring out how to compete because everyone's compete looks a little different.
He made a good point too about what they did in Indianapolis and why they thought they were so successful in the draft there, and that the coaches had a big role in what they were looking for there. And he actually brought up and talked about what they look for in player interviews when they were in Indianapolis.
One thing that we did as a coaching staff and as the scouts, when we were interviewing these players, we tried to figure out, is this guy love football, right? Is this guy competitive? Is this guy tough? Does this guy have high football IQ? We were trying to answer those questions on everyone because when you're competitive, when you're tough, when you have high football IQ, and when you love football, you're gonna take your skill talent, you're gonna take your talent, everything that God blessed you with talent-wise, and you're gonna maximize that.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't say anything that's earth-shattering there, but the fact of the matter is this. You have a situation where they are finding the guys because Roseman was asked at the end a question about Alabama players and why they didn't draft Alabama players, and there's Sirianni saying, we got to find the guys, forget where they go. Like, I don't feel like because you're not drafting Alabama players that's why you're failing. There's a lot of players in this league that don't play at Alabama that are pretty darn good. By the way, Justin Jefferson was one of them. He played at LSU. The other two guys went to Bama. And I think everybody rather have Justin Jefferson than the other two guys from last year. 609-403-0973. Couple more comments come in. I love the fact these guys go back and forth and have a good old conversation in the video chat. Here's one from Jalen. He says, Schrager's mock scares me. He said this year that he purposely puts the first mock out, and then he gets calls from people in the league telling him more about what teams are doing. Yeah, that's what I said. I put a lot of stock into Schrager's mock draft, because I think at the NFL Network, they've got some sources that really help him formulate that. And you notice the guys who don't do a lot of mock drafts, they do one, they get more information. That one, to me, makes a lot of sense, and I hate to say that it makes a lot of sense because I don't want them to take an offensive lineman. I don't mind the extra second-round pick in this year's draft. Mike, you seem less opposed to them. Oh, I didn't say that. I definitely am not a fan of them taking an offensive lineman. I'm just telling you, look, when I do what I do, when I talk, it's not how particularly I might feel. I'm just giving you from a standpoint of this is how they feel. I don't want an offensive lineman. I will preface it by saying I don't want the offensive lineman. I'm just telling you, I see that. I tweeted out earlier, and if I think, Jalen, you follow me on Twitter, so you can follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. I said, I thought we got some interesting clues on the draft in the press conference today. That was one of the clues that I took. I'm not less opposed. I'm just saying it's opened my eyes that it's a possibility now. That's it. Bruce, one of the more interesting points during the press conference is how they interviewed 120 players at the Senior Bowl this year compared to 15 to 20 in previous years. I wonder why that is. I don't know why. Did they say, look, we failed last year, we need to do better? Javier is watching on Facebook. Mike, what's your opinion of Philly moving up to number 5, make a trade with Cincinnati, get a playmaker like Fitz? Philly has a lot of first rounds next year. They can use that for a trade. Hey, I have no problem getting Fitz in this trade. I don't know that that's a possibility. I don't think they move up to 5. You know what? Quite frankly, I think that they moved up to 5, they're going to be disappointed if they want Fitz, because I think he's going to be gone at number 4. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app coming up inside the Sixers. We haven't talked a lot of Sixers today, but they got a big game tonight. Plus, George Hill. Something that was said about George Hill by Doc Rivers, I want to bring up to Paul Hudrick, who wrote a great piece about George Hill. It's up right now on our website, 973ESPN.com. Check it out. He wrote a great piece on the web about George Hill. So if you want to kind of get some insight on how the Sixers might use George Hill and his presence and how it changes the Sixers lineup, check that out now on our website, 973ESPN.com. All right, boy. I feel last night I had awful allergies. Anybody else have awful allergies last night? They were horrendous. Horrendous. I got them late in the show with Pete Thompson. If you go back and watch me with Pete Thompson yesterday, you will see I was struggling. I had horrible allergies yesterday, and I feel like I'm starting to get them again right now. So I apologize if I'm going to start sounding very stuffily or nasally or, something like that. But I feel like they're coming back on, and there's nothing I can do. So I apologize in advance. Sports Bash brought to you by John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Online, at deere.com. Plus, I got a couple new shows I'm watching on TV. I'm wondering if anybody else is watching these with me. I always like to pass that info, that kind of stuff. If you have a show you're watching on TV, something new, something different, because I got a couple that I'm throwing into the mix. All right, Hudrick's next, Inside the Sixers. Keep your texts coming. If you have football at 4 questions for Geoff Mosher, you can start sending them in now. 609-403-0973. And Moshe from Inside the Birds will answer those today, football at 4. But we got a lot to unpack when it comes to that press conference today. I hate that commercial because the girl brushes her teeth and the sound of the toothbrush against teeth drives, it's like the nails on the chalkboard sound to me. Oh my God, it drives me nuts. All right. By the way, I got that text message from that guy about the allergies. I appreciate that. That's very nice. I will look into that. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I watched Unsellable Houses last night. That's what I watched with no Sixers game on HGTV. Unsellable Houses. That's my new show. Just throwing that out there for the fellas. You want to watch something? There you go. Unsellable Houses. There's Paul Hudrick. He's got a great piece up right now. We're going to get into that. We got a game against the Suns tonight. Very important. A lot to dive on into here, of course, as the Sixers, about 10 games left to go in the season. And Paul joins us, of course, via the Boardwalk Honda hotline as we go inside the Sixers. Down the stretch they come, Paul, and we know they got a very tough stretch. They got tonight and then tomorrow against Milwaukee, then Milwaukee again. So I want to get your take, though. We didn't get a chance to really get recap the Warrior game. You lose a game without Simmons and Harris against a team that's about 500 in your building. How do you unpack that one?
It's a couple different things, Mike. Certainly, there were signs that were disappointing. Like Steph Curry going for 49 points on the run he's on right now. I mean, you kind of just throw your hands up when you consider they didn't give. It's not like they gave up 120 points. The bigger issue to me was the half court offense and the way that Kevon Looney and Draymond Green, credit to them, the job they did on Joel Embiid. And the fact that no other Sixer made them pay. That was the biggest thing that was disappointing to me. But to that end, Mike, you mentioned, I mean, you're down 2 starters. Ben Simmons out. I know some people be like, oh, well, he wouldn't have helped with the half-court offense. Well, that's kind of ridiculous. I don't agree with that. Plus, your team defense, he would have been such a huge help against Curry and against others. And it's Tobias Harris. I mean, he's been your second guy. When Joel Embiid has been double-teamed or when you've needed a bucket in stretches during the game, Tobias Harris has been that guy. So to miss those 2 guys was huge. I thought Seth Curry was great in the first half. I don't know if it was, he's missed a couple games. I don't know if maybe he was a little tired the second half or what happened there, but I don't even think he scored a point in the second half. And then Shake Milton was disappointing off the bench. Tyrese Maxey gave them a really nice spark. George Hill did some nice things, but you could tell he's still rusty. He's still figuring some things out. I thought Korkmaz struggled for the first time in a little bit here. So to me, what I take out of it is, yes, the half-court offense was very disappointing, but it is very difficult when you're missing 2 starters, including a guy that is such a big part of what you do offensively.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if it's like, is it a bad loss? Like at this point in the season, you got to win games. You got to beat these teams because this race is 1 game apart. That game would have made it a 2-game differential. Instead, you lose the half game, and now you fall back. That, at the end, we might look back and say, you had a home game against the Warriors. I know you're shorthanded, but so I don't know. It's like I'm trying to. That's why I'm trying to like find out how people look at that. I mean, Curry just had one of those nights. I thought Joel got caught up in the moment a little late in the game.
Maybe a little bit.
Like Curry hits a 30-footer, then Embiid tries to do something, and he ends up traveling. Then he throws the bad pass. Curry hits another 3, and it was almost like, hey, he's doing that. I got to do this. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm talking about.
I think to an extent that, Mike, but I also think it's just the way, again, to go back to the way that they kind of defended him. He was clearly frustrated all night. He did, for the most part, he did a pretty good job of handling those double teams. I think he had a season high in assists in that game. So he was, kind of controlling the half-court offense pretty darn well for a while there. And then I think he got frustrated by the fact that he couldn't score and then that no one else was really helping him. And I think, yeah, to your point, I think he kind of took it upon himself and maybe tried to do a little too much. And I think that's why. And listen, the guy's been so good all year. He's not gonna be perfect every night. He's gonna make mistakes. And I think he just had, at the end of the game, I think he just had a bad night because he forced some stuff. And I think maybe a part of him felt like he had to. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he did. Maybe the only way they were going to win that game is if he forced stuff and it worked. So it's a bad night. These things happen. I would say, too, when you look around, it's funny, Mike, like, is Brooklyn, do they want the 1 seed right now? Because they sure aren't playing guys like they want the 1 seed. So you see their list of guys who are out. Milwaukee now, I mean, Giannis is banged up, so I don't know what his status is going to be going forward. So, you want to win games. You don't want to lose any games. But the reality is this thing will still be very much in their hands. The schedule is going to soften up after these, difficult games tonight against Phoenix, who I think is the most underrated team in the NBA, then 2 in Milwaukee. And then after that, it gets pretty soft after that. I mean, yeah, Atlanta twice, but it's a lot of breaks in between. So I'm not as worried about it. But, yeah, of course, you'd prefer to stack wins now.
Yeah, and I saw something about the Nets I'm sure that a lot of people have seen. By the way, since James Harden has entered the Nets lineup, when they're all together, they're 5-2. When there's 2 of them there, they're 20-6. When there's only 1, they're 7-4. And when there's none of them, they have not won a game. But no team has won an NBA championship where each of your top 3 scorers missed 10 games or more. And they are now in that department now where these guys just aren't playing together. And we're running out of games now, Paul. So this will be interesting to find out because Harden just had a setback. right? I mean, he might not play
Yes.
for another couple of weeks. So you got that. And then Durant got hurt again, too. So you're right. But so this game tonight is important for Philly. But this is, as you just mentioned, this is a very good Suns team. If you're just a casual fan, you listen to Inside the Sixers, you love the Sixers, you watch Sixers games, and you say, the Suns, they've been bad for 10 years. Not this Suns team.
No, this is a very, very, very dangerous basketball team. You look, Devin Booker to me is one of the most underrated players in the entire league. He is just a scorer and could do it in bunches. He's become a better playmaker as his career is going on. Still very young. And talk about 3 levels. I mean, he could do it. He's a great 3-point shooter, can kill you in the mid-range, has a great finishing packages, whether it's a floater, whether it's at the rim. He's athletic. And then you add a guy like Chris Paul to that mix. Chris Paul's one of the greatest point guards to ever play this game, and he is still really, really, really good. And then the pieces around him, they built that team so well around him. Mikal Bridges, who is sort of kind of a former Sixer, would look awfully good as a Sixer right now. But he has been playing. He has been playing excellent for them this season. He's having a great year. If Julius Randle wasn't having the year he's having with the Knicks, Mikal Bridges would certainly be in that most improved conversation with the way he's played. Veterans like a guy like Jay Crowder has added something for them. So I just think you have those 2 stars in Booker and Paul, and then the supporting cast is just really filled in the gaps. And they're a very good defensive team. Monty Williams has done an excellent job as an NBA, coming back into the NBA head coaching fraternity there. He's been excellent for them. And so, so like I said, Mike, to me, this is the most underrated team in the NBA. I believe they are the best road team in the NBA. So it's even at full strength, this would be a challenge. If you're missing guys, it's going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah, and by the way, the injury report for today, Seth Curry, questionable. Tobias Harris, questionable. Joel Embiid is questionable. I did not see Ben Simmons. Was he also on that questionable list? Yeah, Ben Simmons was also questionable. So possibly no Simmons, no Embiid, and no Harris. So you're looking back to one of those COVID games that you played earlier in the year if that happens.
Right. That's kind of the sense I got when I saw that injury list. It's like this felt like the Nuggets game when you see 4 or 5 starters potentially missing this game. And I really don't. I have no feel for what's going to happen, Mike. I really don't know. And you have a back-to-back. That's the other thing. Not only do you have to go to Milwaukee and play 2 games, you have to play Milwaukee tomorrow night.
Right. Which means Embiid is probably out tonight or tomorrow. Pick one.
Possibly. And then not only that, on top of that, you're probably not going to play. I wouldn't think you're going to play Tobias Harris both games either. With his knee situation, it's something that's lingering. I doubt you'd want to let him come back and then play a back-to-back immediately. Seth Curry, as I already mentioned, has missed time. He's got a hip flexor that's bothering him in the same leg, the same side, the left side, that is ankle. So that's probably like a compensation kind of injury right there. So you don't want to rush him back. You probably don't want him playing the back-to-backs. And then Simmons, I don't really know the full extent of the illness or what that is. Doc Rivers wasn't positive, but said it's probably like he thought it was like a stomach ailment. So see where he is with hydration levels and fitness level and all that, if he's going to be able to play. So it's a really tricky situation. And it's going to be, I don't envy Doc Rivers and the Sixers medical staff for having to kind of navigate all this. This is really tough, especially in this season that we've mentioned a ton of times, and how weird this schedule is and how condensed it is. So some difficult choices they're going to have to make tonight and beyond through the end of the season.
By the way, Philly is a half game up on Brooklyn, who won last night. They are 4 up on the Bucks. They play the Bucks on Thursday and Saturday. Now, they do have George Hill back. You wrote a great piece about his presence and how it changes the Sixers lineups. So give us some insight on what you saw from Hill in the first game. I know Doc Rivers talked kind of glowingly, even though the stats wouldn't say he did much. Rivers obviously loves having him there. So how his presence, what it means for these lineups.
Right. So the one thing that you saw pretty heavily in that game against the Warriors, which we haven't seen really at all, is a center and then basically 4 guards. I guess you could call Matisse Thybulle a wing, but he guards most of the time. And so to see him kind of almost playing like a stretch 4 kind of a role, setting screens and rolling and stretching out to the 3-point line. I asked Doc Rivers after the game, is it, because clearly part of it was necessity. You have Tobias Harris, you have Ben Simmons out. So you're really hurting kind of at that 4. And Doc Rivers said, no, like this is something I want to take a look at. I want to see how we look with 4 guards with George Hill now in the lineup. So when everything goes back to normal, you have Shake Milton, you have Furkan Korkmaz, you have Matisse Thybulle, and you have George Hill. Those are probably your top 4 reserves. And then Dwight Howard's your center. So when you factor that in, it's not worth it to play Mike Scott, who is struggling. Get your 4 best guys out there and kind of figure it out. And I think that's where Doc Rivers' head is at, is those are my 4 best reserves. So I'm going to play them. And Tyrese Maxey has played very, very well over the last 2 games, while Shake Milton has honestly struggled, especially in that Warriors game. So, and I think that's where Hill comes in, because his versatility and what he can do, he can play on the ball, can play off the ball. I thought he was really passive offensively, understandably so. His debut with the team, he kind of wants to get a feel for things, let the other guys kind of run the show and kind of fit in. And I thought he did that defensively. Listen, he had to guard Steph Curry after not playing basketball since January 24th.
Yeah.
Guarding Steph Curry right now is not that's not an enviable position for anybody, let alone a guy who hasn't played since January. But listen, I thought he played him tough. He face guarded him. He ran around with him. Steph Curry runs around more than any player in the NBA. So for him to do that with his fitness level maybe not being where he wants it to be, that's not easy. And the fact that Hill asked for that, Doc Rivers said that George Hill said, I want to play against Steph. So I thought overall, yeah, I mean, the glowing memory is of Steph hitting a ridiculous step back 3 against the guy. But
that late one where he just gave him, he's at the foul line, like, all right, you want to shoot it? Go ahead.
Because what are you going to do when a guy's on a run like Steph's on? I don't know what you do other than just literally double team and trap him on every single possession. So there's that. And then I just thought too, like with Hill, the dynamic he adds as another ball handler, as a guy who can get to the rim. You saw him get to the rim twice, and then you saw Tyrese Maxey get to the rim a bunch. And it's almost like, is that legal? Or is a team allowed to have multiple guys that can get to the rim? And the Sixers, I think just adding that dimension, I think is only going to help this team.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you about in that game, they were using a lot of pick and roll on Embiid and the defenders going under a lot, which was giving a lot of open looks. If teams are going to start utilizing that more, the Sixers are going to have to do a better job. Now, no, Simmons changes that a little bit. I mean, he normally does a lot better job there, but if that's a way that teams are going to start going after you, and if you're going to go underneath the screen and you're going to have a guy like Curry shooting, I'm imagining the Nets in this situation, obviously.
For sure. Doc Rivers even said, like, he kind of hinted that he could have done something differently. He literally said, I don't want to tell you my strategy, but I think we could have done something different. And I wonder if part of that is a little gamesmanship, because Steph Curry, as you pointed out, is going to be a guy who's going to give similar problems to what those Nets 3 players are going to do. So maybe Doc doesn't want to show all his cards and show maybe some of the looks that he would give to a team like that in a playoff series, which I think is smart. Joel Embiid this year has done a lot more of showing on those pick and rolls as opposed to just dropping right to the rim. He's done that a lot more this year than he ever has in his entire career, and he's done a pretty good job. But with a guy like Steph, Doc even said, like, nah, that's not really what I want him to do. As you pointed out too, Ben Simmons would have been in the lineup, would have been guarding him an awful lot. Does such a better job handling screens, and because of his length and his size and his speed, he can recover so well, and maybe would have given Curry more problems. Although I don't know if anybody could give Curry problems right now, but it would have at least challenged him a little bit more on the perimeter, maybe affecting some of his shots. And I think, with Tobias Harris too, I mean, just that help defense, because that's the thing with Curry. You're not guarding with one guy. That is a team cover. So to miss 2 guys like that in Simmons and Harris, I mean, I think that was huge.
Yeah, I tell you what, the one thing is it shows you, I thought the whole last 3 minutes, because people forget the Sixers, I mean, they had to lose in the game by 8-9. They were winning that game with 3 minutes left. I mean, Embiid hit the free throw. It's 92-91. And I feel like from that point on, not having Ben Simmons on the offensive side and the defensive side, that's where it was very noticeable that you had some problems. It's like, all right, you're having a big night. Let me, but who knows? I mean, Curry could have scored on him too, the way he was going. He would have just stepped back 2 feet further. He had a 28, a 29, and a 30-foot three-pointer in the last 2 minutes of that game. It was truly, I was saying, we had this conversation on Monday after you were off. Who's more entertaining to watch, Embiid or Curry? Now, I love watching Embiid. I think he's just so unique. Nobody else does what he does. Curry is the best at what he does, but he was way more entertaining than Embiid the other night. When he's on, he's the guy. When Embiid is going, it's funny. They're so different, but man, when Curry is going, the handle that he has, and you just said, I brought this up yesterday, what he does without the ball in his hand is the most underrated part of any player of anything in the league, of him running around, driving guys nuts, wearing them out, catching the ball, and he'll pump fake, he's up, he quirks, he's around. I mean, he's just so crafty. He's like Kevin McHale shooting threes up and under, and I mean, it's nuts watching him. And you know, it's tough when he's going. It's tough to find an answer.
And you and I talked on Monday about Joel Embiid, and one of the things I said about Joe that is so impressive is that, you know, he had mentioned that he watched tons of Dirk Nowitzki in the offseason to see how he operated around that nail area and kind of running the offense through that. When he came into the league, he studied Hakeem Olajuwon and he studied some Kobe Bryant. So, and it's the same with Steph. Like, it's a combination of all these players that came before him. Like, he shoots and he plays off the ball like Reggie Miller, but then he handles the ball like I don't know, like Chris Paul, like the way he just is so smooth. And it's the way the game has evolved. It's because of guys like Curry and guys like Embiid who incorporate all the things that guys before them did and combine it and make it this special player that's almost indescribably good. And it's been comical how good. Like I was in the press box laughing at Steph Curry, because it's like, what do you do? Like, all you can do is like watch it and enjoy it because he's just so great. And it's both Doc Rivers and Steve Kerr before the game, they said it's art. What he does is art on a basketball court, and that's what it's like. It's like watching an artist and just do this, like just show their craft at a level that's like beyond what anyone is doing, beyond what anyone has ever done when we're talking about Steph Curry. And by the time his career's over, maybe Joel Embiid as well fits into that category.
He's the best shooter that I think we've ever seen, any of us, and enjoy it while it's here. 33 years old he is, doing what he's doing right now. So keep that in mind. All right, down the stretch they come. Paul will be back on Friday to recap the Sixers and the Bucks, and then get ready for the Bucks on Saturday. And then, of course, we've got next week Oklahoma City and a pair of Atlanta games. So we got a lot of Sixers, but we're running out of games. We'll see it all right here on Inside the Sixers. Paul Hudrick, at Paul Hudrick. Go check out his article on George Hill. It's up right now at 97.3ESPN.com. All right, Paul, thanks, man.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks, man.
And he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline, does a great job covering the Sixers. All right, when we come back, I want to get some Eagles thoughts out here as well. We were talking earlier about the Eagles needing to get younger. I'll give you a reason why the two guys on the offensive line, I think, are going to be here for a little while longer. Plus, a lot of comments coming in. If you have a question for Geoff Mosher for Football at 4, post it now on the video stream or on the text board, 609-403-0973. Got a text message I want to react to, all that and more. Hey, don't forget Football at 4 is coming up. Geoff Mosher's here. If you have a question for Geoff for Football at 4 today, send it in on the comments section of the video or text 609-403-0973. By the way, Nick Maton with a single RBI. Actually, not really an RBI. There was a single and then an error by the left fielder that allowed a run to score. And the Phillies lead it 4-1. But Nick Maton continues to hit. Now, last time I said Nick Maton looks more poised and ready to play at the big league level than Mickey Moniak. Moniak went and hit a 3-run homer. Well, this time he struck out swinging. So welcome back, Mickey. And by the way, welcome back Scott Kingery, who also struck out on a 93-mile-per-hour fastball right down the middle of the plate, swung right through it. 93 in today's game is not all that hard anymore. Kingery really looks lost up there. This Nick Maton's impressive. He reminds me a little bit of like Kevin Stocker when he got called up to play shortstop in 1993. No one had really heard of him. He was there known for his defense. Maton's a hell of a defensive shortstop. But he's swinging the bat. He looks confident. He looks poised up there. He looks like he has a clue at the plate. And he might be one of those interesting guys. Who knows? Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. All right, 609-403-0973. Mike, Nick Sirianni is Gabe Kapler. Let's stop right there. Gabe Kapler is, I thought, outmanaged Joe Girardi last night. If you watch the game and have any clue, I thought Kapler outmanaged Girardi last night. So Nick Sirianni being Gabe Kapler is not a bad thing. Look, Kapler, I think, got a bad rap here. He had a roster that was not talented, and he's got a roster in San Francisco that's not talented, and he's finding ways to win. He found ways to make the Phillies 500. He also was a reason why they lost some games, but you saying Nick Sirianni is Gabe Kapler is basically saying that Sirianni has a good chance to do well. The text goes on to say he's underqualified guy who's just a yes man for the powers that be. His answers are long-winded and make no sense. This is a serious job in a serious sports city. The team is going through one of its worst times. They've had one losing season. They're going through one of its worst times. What does that say? Does that mean the franchise is like the best franchise in the history of sports? That this is one of their worst times? They've had one losing season. One. This isn't a 5-year, 10-year losing season. They've had one losing season, which coincided with more injuries than any other team in football other than one, San Francisco. So everything you said so far has been absolutely off base. The guy sounded like an idiot when he says he's using rock, paper, scissors, shoot as a way to measure competitiveness. If you took it that way, you read it wrong, and that makes you the idiot. It was an example of they're on Zoom calls, and they can't have the guys in the building. So to do competitive things, they're having some fun. So it goes right back to who sounds like the idiot, you or him. Now, let's be honest. We know the answer to that, and it's not him. So everything you said there has been absolutely off base. I thought that his answers were high passion, a lot of energy. I don't find him to be an underqualified yes man. I thought that he took over the press conference. A non-qualified yes man would keep his mouth shut and speak when spoken to. He took over the press conference, and in fact, at one point, Howie Roseman acquiesced to him and said, you answer the question. You seem to be more qualified to answer this than me. If you actually watch the press conference, it doesn't sound like you did. It sounds like you just wanted to try to say something. You would see that Sirianni essentially ran the press conference. Halfway through that, he ran the press conference. The first half, he kind of sat there and took it all in. Then he said, you know what? Let me get my voice in here. I thought Sirianni had a great day today. Now, I know a lot of people out there being critical because he seems so high energy. He seems like very rah-rah. Guess what? You know, the kids that play football in the NFL now are 23, 24, 25. They don't want to listen to me. They don't want to listen to some 50-year-old curmudgeon, 65-year-old guy. They want a young guy who can relate to them. And by the way, again, the Eagles going through one of their worst times? Huh? They went to the playoffs 2 years ago. They went to the playoffs the year before that. And oh, by the way, they won the Super Bowl the year before that. If this is one of their worst times, this is one of the greatest franchises in history, which I don't agree with, but this is far from one of their worst times. Far from one of their worst times. (609-403-0973). All right, we got questions coming in for Mosher for football at 4. If you're watching the live video, you can post your questions over there, and we will pop them up on the screen for Geoff Mosher. But I want to say this about the Eagles getting younger, and they need to get younger. They certainly have guys that are getting older, and they need to replace. But I'm going to tell you right now, Lane Johnson's contract goes to 2025. The Eagles have one of the best cap situations in football next year. So unless they absolutely, and by the way, Brandon Brooks' contract goes to 2024. So unless they are in cap disarray, which I don't see happening, they have one of the best cap situations in football next year. They had bad cap this year and this year only. Following this year, they have one of the best cap situations. There's no need for them to release or cut to save money Brandon Brooks or Lane Johnson. They're both under contract. Lane Johnson till 2025 and Brandon Brooks till 2024. They're not just going to release those guys just to say we're getting younger. They left Jason Peters here till he was 40. And by the way, he played pretty well up until, I think he was 39. Jason Peters at 38 years old, not this year, the year before, was Pro Football Focus's top left tackle. I know you guys didn't think he played well, but the whole league struggles to find a left tackle. The Eagles are not letting Lane Johnson or Brandon Brooks go until those contracts are up. So you can keep saying, well, they're old, they need to get younger. They have those two guys signed, and they're going to play. Because you know why? They are two of the best in the league. You're not just giving up the two best. Brandon Brooks is the best right guard or the second best right guard. He's in the top 3. If you think there's someone better, fine. He's regarded as one of the top 3. Lane Johnson is one of the best right tackles in football. They're not getting rid of those guys. Howie Roseman said today, Sayamala, I think, will be the center when Kelsey retires. And then you have Dillard and Mailata. The one area you're probably going to need a new guy at is left guard. You don't draft the left guard typically in the top 10 or 12, but that's why I think they might trade back and get one at 15. And I say guard, a guy like Rashawn Slater or a guy like Ali Vera Tucker who can play guard and tackle. All right. Mosher's on the other side. Football at 4, 609-403-0973. Send your texts for Mosher. If you're watching the show live video, send your messages in the chat. We'll put those up on the screen for Geoff. He'll be here next. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Sports Bash is brought to you by Dorothy Gale Roofing. There's no place like your home. And if you have a leak or need a new roof, call Dorothy Gale Roofing, 877-97-KEVIN, or visit them online at dorothyroofing.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Coming up, I have a Sports Bash cash code word. It's worth $1,000. Here it comes.
Mike.
Ball at 4 with Geoff Mosher.
My personality is I want to win badly. I want to win more Lombardis for Philadelphia and our fans. We got the greatest fans around, and I will do everything possible.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Yeah, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., but you can get content all week long inside the draft with Greg Cosell, Q&A. Of course, the Inside the Birds podcast Mondays and Thursdays, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. This is Football at 4. We talk NFL, we talk Eagles, we got draft, we've got it all right now. Geoff Mosher is with me here. We got a lot of questions for Mosher from our listeners that are already coming in that we will ask him throughout the day. But obviously, a lot of people are talking about the press conference today. Howie Roseman, Andy Weidel, and Nick Sirianni, who, I mean, really took over the press conference. I mean, he sat there for about 10 minutes, Geoff. He didn't say anything and then decided, you know what? It's my time. It's my time. I'm taking over this thing. I don't know. Some people thought it was bad. Some people enjoyed it. I don't know what to think, but I got a lot of clues and some interesting stuff from it. How did you take it?
I think it's becoming pretty clear that Nick Sirianni press conferences are must-see TV, right? I mean, I totally agree with you that you almost felt him as he was sitting there, just like, man, when's someone going to ask me a question? And even before he went into the rock, paper, scissors stuff that has everybody into a buzz, I mean, you got the hands flying everywhere. He smacked his microphone saying boom like John Madden. I feel like this guy he needs to get on a football field and coach. I'm sure he's wired that way. I don't think he's handling the this new pandemically, restricted off season very well.
Oh, the part where, somebody asks a question and he says, well, let me jump in here.
Yeah.
I get ready for a game Saturday through Tuesday or whatever, and this is what these guys are going through right now, except it's just longer, and they get to see what I do, and now I get to see what they do. I mean, this guy was so excited about the opportunity to it almost felt like, Geoff, when you get hired at a place and that first week or two, feeling yourself around, now he feels comfortable in his surroundings, and you're like, oh, this is Nick Sirianni. Like, he definitely seems like he feels more comfortable with the guys around him. Yeah,
I mean, if Nick Sirianni had any feedback from his first few press conferences, right, that was either the fans don't love this or a little sheepish about you, like, he certainly didn't care, right? I mean, he just kind of doubled down on who he is, and that's great, having that kind of confidence in the skin. At the end of the day, Mike, whether with his demeanor, it's all about how it plays in the locker room. It doesn't matter what you or I think. It doesn't matter what the fans think. It's about what the players think. I sense, and I'll give you a little more context in a minute, I sense that when things are going well and the team's winning, that's a great attitude. What he's got is a great attitude for people to bring people together. What I do wonder about, and I'm not saying he doesn't have it, what I naturally wonder is how he talks to his team after one of those tough losses, a divisional loss to the Cowboys, right? Does he have a different tone that kind of resonates with the locker room? Because I will say, while about 10 minutes after his press conference or the whole conference, I got a couple of text messages from former players, some who I haven't spoken to in a couple of weeks or quite a while. And their texts to me were kind of what you'd expect a little bit from the other side. Like kind of like, one was an emoji of a guy going like, hitting himself in the forehead. Another is what's going on here. So I can tell you that, I think that players whose opinions matter more than anybody else, they're looking at it and wondering the same thing that we're all wondering. How is that going to work when you're talking about adult men after a tough loss? And that's for Nick Sirianni and his staff to find out. We're not going to answer that question now. But I don't think it's all. Listen, there were a lot of things said at that press conference that we'll talk about that I thought were way more important and pertinent, and even alarming in some ways than Nick Sirianni talking about the rock, paper, and scissor contest with draft prospects.
Yeah, I mean, the rock, paper, scissors, I took it as he was trying to just show a playful side of, hey, we can't get guys in the building but we want to show a competitive atmosphere, so much so that I'm doing rock, paper, scissors on Zoom. And he might have been serious about it, but that's why I think the Hurts stuff that he didn't name, that they didn't come out and say it, I think was getting blown out of proportion as well. I think he's trying to show the rock, paper, scissors is a message of we want competition no matter what. We want competition, whether it's rock, paper, scissors, all the way to the starting quarterback. Does that mean that Fletcher Cox has to compete for his job? No, but the message that he wants is that that's the message of the building, that it's so competitive in here that if we're on Zoom, we're going to compete. And if you're the quarterback, you're going to compete.
Yeah. So I have two thoughts on that, and they're a little bit disparate. One is that I think that that's pretty common for a first-year head coach.
Right.
And that's a good philosophy to have. You don't hand over jobs. You don't want to be seen as the pushover or anything like that when you're just getting here, right? So the second thing, though, is we all know, and we just saw with Carson Wentz, you treat quarterbacks a little bit differently. I don't know that I would have just not mentioned his name whatsoever and said nothing about him. I think Jalen Hurts, from some of what I've heard, has looked at what's going on this offseason and wondering why there has been mixed messaging. Why is it that Carson's not here and I'm the only quarterback on the roster, right? But then there's always this hesitance to just say I'm the starting quarterback too. Like, quarterbacks you treat differently. They want to know they're the guy when they are the guy, and they want to be able to then move forward and act like the guy. So I'm not blaming Nick Sirianni for the competition, iron sharpens iron type of mentality. I think that's good. I think getting too extreme to the point where we're not going to say his name in a press conference may not be the best approach to it.
Yeah, definitely fair. A couple clues that I took. I want to get your opinion on. One, he talked about taking the call from Miami, and they wanted to find out who they were trading with. And when he saw that it was San Francisco going to 3, he felt, all right, that means 3 quarterbacks are getting taken. And that's why he felt comfortable. Does that say to you that two things? One, it will be I don't think they want a quarterback. So that tells me that they're okay with Hurts. I think that's the message there without saying his name is, we didn't want a quarterback anyway. If you move up, it's because you're taking a quarterback. So we'll move back, which means they feel pretty comfortable with the guy they get at 12 because they were willing to move back because they knew that 3 quarterbacks were going to go.
Right. Comfortable in that they're also getting a future first-round pick, right? And not, yes. And so I agree with you. They're out of the – right. The message is they're out of the first-round quarterback business. I don't know that means that it's a true devotion to Jalen Hurts. I mean, you have to see what happens here around the league. I mean, there's still some quarterbacks who might become available. We've heard Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, other names out there. So nothing's really cemented to me in my mind by him saying that, other than they're going with Jalen Hurts instead of a first-round quarterback.
Correct.
Right.
That's what I took. But also that means 9 guys are going to be there that they feel or
comfortable with. Right.
Yeah, that they're going to be, of those 9, someone will be there at 12 that they like. Now, the other part that I took that I thought was really interesting was when he talked about Sayamalo, he said that we view him as a starting center and that could play left guard.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of tells me that offensive lineman could be in play here, because when Kelsey leaves, they might see Sayamalo as the center, which means you could get Slater or Ali Vera Tucker as your new left guard.
Yeah, I mean, I've consistently said this with you and on Inside the Birds podcast, is that when the Eagles pick this high in the first round under Howie Roseman and under Andy Reid, traditionally they're taking an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. Now, that doesn't mean they're doing it this year, but you're just talking about being comfortable with the cluster. And in that cluster, there's going to be an offensive lineman, maybe even 2, depending on what happens with Penei Sewell, but certainly Rashawn Slater. There will probably be 2 cornerbacks to choose from. They may be gone, they may not. And there'll be a pass rusher or 2 at that spot as well. And that aligns more with what they historically do when they pick that high than, say, picking a Jamar Chase or a Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, which, I mean, and I wouldn't be surprised more so now listening to that if they were at 12 and moved back again to, say, 15. There's a team at 15 that needs a quarterback, got another second or third round pick, and took that lineman at a spot like 15 or 20. The Bears are at 20 and got more assets because of what he said about the offensive line stuff. I thought, and Andy Weidel mentioned that both Slater and Vera Tucker both didn't want to list them by position, just said flexibility, the ability to play multiple positions, like that adds to your, luster. So I thought that was pretty revealing today.
I tell you, some people think that now you wouldn't draft the kid this high to do it, but that Rashawn Slater could play center in the NFL and be good at it because his arms are a little short. Same thing with Sewell, but Sewell's 330 pounds. Slater's only 305 pounds. So that enables him to play. That just shows you how athletic he is. He can play left tackle, but he can also play guard and maybe center. You wouldn't draft him that high to play center, but perhaps if you were really deep on an offensive line and that was where he best fit in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and you move him there, then you're probably doing pretty well on the O-line.
All right. Early in the presser, this got kind of overshadowed. He was asked about last year's draft board. He didn't poo-poo it, but essentially was asked, hey, did you draft a guy that wasn't drafted who wasn't listed as high on your draft board? And he didn't say no. I thought he kind of said, we're not writing the book on those guys. We're excited about this coaching staff to get their hands on those guys.
Yeah, that stuck it to me. That was that question and answer involving Tim McManus from ESPN.com and Howie was the quote or the back and forth, if you will, of the press conference that nobody's talking about. Because Tim McManus opened that question with a statement, an accusation, really. He said, Howie, it's been well documented that you didn't stay true to your board last year, right? And then he said, I think the question was, has this process been tweaked or is that going to happen again? And 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 in the past, Howie's going to say, well, what you just because you think that, or I mean, he's not one to let a public narrative go without a debate. But he did not. He did not say that's wrong. He didn't even address it. Okay. To me, that was pretty alarming. So, I mean, that's an admission, to which we already have known and we've reported, but that they did not stay true to their board last year in several of their picks, not just any one in particular. And I heard nothing like in the press conference that makes me absolutely positively sure it's not going to happen again. All I heard was we've learned from the process. And then, as you mentioned, what he wound up saying was, the coaches are very much a part of the process, and you want to make sure at the end of the day you get the coaches, you get the players for the coaches. But I'm sorry, you're a general manager of about a decade. If you're favoring one, your job is to execute a brainstorm between all your departments, your coaches, your scouts, your analytics people, anybody else involved. And if you're showing a preference or a lean toward one and not the others, and you make that pick on that, that's still on you. I mean, that's how I see it. You're the general manager. It's your decision. So if you're now throwing the coaches under the bus saying you were picking for them, I'm sorry. I think that's a little bit classless myself.
Or like, hey, I picked guys. I don't think the coaching staff did a very good job with them. And I'm much more intrigued by what this coaching staff will do with these guys.
That's a good point. Maybe he was blaming talent development, but that still doesn't go to whether or not you stuck to your board or not. That doesn't answer that question. But I find it interesting because someone asked him about Jeffrey Lurie's involvement. It's the same reports, right? About involvement in the draft process. And he's like, no, this is not true. So it's weird that the same reporters who must be true about him not staying true to his board are not accurate about Jeffrey Lurie's involvement in the draft process. It must be the world's greatest coincidence, Mike.
I want to get your take also on Sirianni. I thought gave a great answer to this question about the X receiver. And in fact, if you notice, Moshe, the question was really asked to Roseman. Mm-hmm. It was Nick and Roseman. But he said, when you're looking for this X receiver, is there something you have in mind when you want to look at it? And Roseman acquiesced to him. You answer that question. No, you're the talent evaluator. But he actually said, it'll make me feel that Sirianni has a voice in there. Mm-hmm. Hey, what are you looking for with an X receiver? And he basically said, I had a 5'9" X receiver. I had a 6'2" X receiver. I had a guy in the middle. I had a fast guy. I had a quick guy. I had a strong guy. I mean, he really laid out all these different styles and said, there is no model X receiver. It's if the guy's talented enough, I will use him in his talent mold.
Yeah, I thought it was a great answer. I agree with you. And I think what it goes to show is that to play that position in the NFL, does size always matter? Not really. What matters is whether or not you can handle what comes with playing the X position in the NFL, and that's usually press coverage, right? So you can be a small guy, but you might have great hand usage. You may have such elite speed that someone who tries to press you and misses cannot recover. And it sort of felt like they were having a discussion about Devontae Smith there, right? About guys being able to play X at all shapes and sizes. It almost felt like that was code language for whether or not Devontae Smith could be an X receiver on the Eagles. But I thought it was a very good answer, and in which he was able to describe the differences between T.Y. Hilton, Dwayne Bowe, Keenan Allen, and how they're all built differently, but were able to play that position because of their skill set.
Yeah, and the fact that Roseman just said, you take this one. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. And I'll tell you why. Adam and I talk a lot on the podcast about this coaching staff, and at very least, it should be better at developing the wide receiver position than maybe past coaching staffs.
Totally
because Nick Sirianni is a wide receiver pedigree. Kevin Patullo, the pass game specialist, is a wide receiver convert from quarterback. And obviously the wide receivers coach, Aaron Moorhead, actually played wide receiver not only in college but in the NFL with the Colts for a couple of years. So, I mean, you've got if you look back to last staff and how they were the quarterback cocoon with Reich and with DiFilippo and with Peterson, and that really that did enable development from Carson Wentz. And then, of course, with Nick Foles taking over, you would hope the same thing here with this staff and wide receivers, that their experience and pedigree at that position improves the development at that position.
Let's get a couple quick. We got a lot of questions today, but we had some good back and forth because of this press conference. But a couple draft questions. Jarrett, Jeff Mosher, do you believe the Eagles are seriously considering D-line with their first pick?
I do. I'm not saying I think it's the number one position on their board, but a guy like Kwity Paye really fits what they would do. He's probably the best 4-3 pass rusher. When I say best, maybe safest, because a lot of people like Jalen Phillips, but he had that kind of, I think he's had some concussions, and he had a thing where he left UCLA and gave up football, and then, went to Miami after that. So like we talked about earlier, when the Eagles are picking in the top 15, go look how many times a defensive lineman has been taken. It's been, a lot. And so that's a position they value.
Jonathan says all these defensive linemen are projected as prospects. At least one of them would be top 10, if not for COVID. Well, keep in mind, like, Rousseau opted out.
Yep.
Kwity Paye only played like 4 games this past year. So it's really hard to really analyze this defensive line class.
It really is. And they're all built a little bit differently. Like Azeez Ojulari, I mean, he's a guy who looks like a 3-4 edge rusher because he's only 5'11", but he's got like the wingspan of someone who's 6'4", something like that, something crazy like that. He's got a great wingspan and can play in 4-3 defenses if used correctly. So I think people – they're trying to get to know these prospects as good as possible. They're trying to see as much tape. They're even going back to the year before in some cases. Now, that hurts Kwity Paye, who was stuck behind Rashaan Evans, right? Who's now with the Packers. But you can only work with what you got.
Yeah. All right, let's do one more real fast. Mosher, they said they met with every single player at the Senior Bowl, normally 15 to 20. How do you read into that? I've had a couple people bring that up today.
Being more thorough, right? Because they acknowledged that the restrictions last year made it difficult. This year they were able to do a little. I think the Senior Bowl was canceled 2 years ago, if I'm not, or maybe it happened before COVID. I don't remember, but the Combine obviously was canceled. So the Senior Bowl was really the best chance this offseason to get a really good look at as many people as you could. So the Eagles sent 10 people down, and they did more interviews. Now I'm not worried that that's paralysis by analysis. I just feel like that's compensating for what you don't normally get during the pre-draft process.
Games, man.
Oh man. I wonder if they did an analytical survey on which of the 3 wins more.
Right.
Our chart says if you go with scissors, it's like the Wonderlic thing, man. That's like a 60% win value right there.
We didn't hear any Wonderlic scores this year.
That's a good point. I don't know if they were administered this year because of the pandemic.
You think Jalen Phillips is there in the second round? That's from Kyle Dubray.
Do I think Jalen Phillips can fall in the second round? There's a chance, Mike. I mean, there's obviously going to be questions about medically from the concussions, I believe it is, and then also, what happened when he gave up football for a year and then transferred. But I will say this: I think based on my discussions with some scouts and with guys like Greg Cosell, the talent is first round talent, and not even just first round, but upper first round talent.
Yeah, is that an aqua shirt? Adam Kaplan would like to know.
It's an aqua shirt. It is an aqua. No stripes, no checkers. Now, Adam's asking this because I don't know, people constantly leave messages on our YouTube channel and things about the shirts that I wear because I wear a lot of checkered shirt and striped shirt stuff. So I went with the plain aqua blue today, I guess.
When you watch me on this show, I'm always wearing black, man. I got bright blue underneath today, but you got to go with the black on the camera.
Nice and slimming, right?
There we go. All right. Football at 4, the new podcast drops tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Check out all the content at InsideTheBirds.com. Inside the Draft with Greg Cosell is up. The new one falls Inside the Birds podcast drops tomorrow morning at 6. And, of course, tomorrow, Inside the Birds, Andrew DeCecco will talk more draft. Adam will be here on Friday to give us some insight on everything that's happening. And we'll be 1 week from the draft starting
What's
tomorrow.
What's he going to wear? What will Adam be wearing on Friday?
Well, tune in to find out.
Tune in.
Tommy Bahama 3-zip.
Adam Reed.
All right, man. Take care.
Have a good one.
Adam Kaplan, Geoff Mosher, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. We'll keep the football talk going through most of the show today. I feel very football mood, which is why I called my friend John Clayton, the professor. He's going to join me at 4:40 today. So if you're in the football mood, keep it here because John Clayton, the professor, will join me then, plus Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports at 5:25 tonight. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. This hour is brought to you by Prop Swap, where America buys and sells sports bets. I tell you, the video, we got a lot going on in the video chat, but Mosher was good today. I like the people who enjoyed that, that said this is good stuff. Hey, it's always football at 4, man. 4 o'clock, you're getting football. It's like mandatory Metallica, Johnny Cash Gill. Yeah, I'm always the man in black. All right, Prop Swap. Don't forget, check out Prop Swap. You can do a bet like this, too, at Prop Swap. You bet the Sixers game yesterday. The line was +1. And if you see the line change from today to yesterday, you can sell that ticket. If the line all of a sudden goes to +5 and you got the Sixers at +1, you can sell that ticket at Prop Swap. It's another thing to keep in mind. Check them out. They're my friends, PropSwap.com. All right, bottom of the hour, we'll talk with John Clayton in 10 minutes. We'll keep the NFL talk going. 609-403-0973. See some messages coming in on the video stream. If you are listening on the radio and the text board's open, 609-403-0973. Geoff says, one thing I've learned about NFL draft is really no predicting it. No, there's not any predicting it. You know why? Because there's always one thing that kind of throws it off. But what there is are clues. And I thought Howie Roseman gave some clues today. I think offensive line's in the mix now. I hate to tell you, I didn't really think offensive line was in the mix, just mainly because I don't want one. I don't think they need one. But I think it's in the mix. After what they said today, I'll play it for you. That this is the bite that made me think, all right, offensive line is in play. They said something else. Andy Weidel said something else too. I don't think I have that particular bite, but he talked about the two draft prospects not named Penei Sewell. It was Slater and Vera Tucker, sorry. And he talked about their flexibility and the fact that they have a lot of versatility. But he said, Roseman said this.
Isaac gives us tremendous flexibility to take the best player at either of those two spots because he does have the ability to be a good starting center. Obviously, we've seen him play guard. So having a guy like that allows us to not force either of those two positions.
Right. So him saying that, we can view him as a center and that he can play center and has flexibility, which means, hey, when Kelsey's done, we can move him to center. But if that happens, that's why I think offensive line is in play. All right, let's see. What else do we get here? Let's go to Harris. Mike, do you see the Eagles going for that Penn State tight end or Doug P's son? Also about Kyle Trask, late pick. All right, let me go with Trask first, okay? Because I think Trask is the biggest possibility of all the other quarterbacks. And there's obvious reasons here. There's a connection. Brian Johnson's the quarterback coach. This is a relationship business. Brian Johnson says, I know Kyle Trask, right? I know Kyle Trask. So I think, and you have 2 third-round picks. So don't be surprised in the third round if that's who they end up going with. If they can find in the third round that second pick and they can find out that Trask is still going to be on the board in that spot. Now, I don't know how you find that out. I'm just saying, like, if they get a feel, I should say is the word, then yes, I definitely think that Kyle Trask would be the guy that they would be inclined to take at that spot. Right? Agree or disagree? I would definitely think that Kyle Trask, to me, is the guy that makes the most sense if you are taking a quarterback. Now, if they want to go in another direction, they say, look, we really like Kurtz. We don't want to go down that road. That's a different story. But if you are saying, look, we got to find a quarterback, and keep in mind, they value the backup quarterback a lot. They really value the backup quarterback. They showed you that last year. They drafted one in the second round. So definitely keep that in mind. Remember, keep this conversation in mind when we're talking about Kyle Trask. Now, what was the other part of it, Harris? Do you see them taking a tight end or Doug P's son? Doug P's son plays tight end and the Penn State tight end. Okay, yeah. I think they need a tight end too because I think they'll trade Ertz on draft night. They only have Dallas Goedert. I think you bring another tight end into the mix. They got to do something at that position. I think it's probably a guy, that they end up taking. I would say, they have the 2 third-round picks. That's a possibility. Probably get somebody in the 4th round. Doug P's son, I don't know that he's a guy that you're taking in the 3rd round. But yeah, I definitely think tight end is in the mix. All right, when we come back, we'll get into more of this NFL draft and NFL stories, and we'll do it with my buddy John Clayton, the professor, as he joins me next here on the Sports Bash Live. This hour brought to you by Prop Swap. Download the Prop Swap app and start prop swapping today. All right, Sports Best is brought to you by your Delaware Valley Acura dealers. Get great deals on Acura's award-winning lineup. Shop online at DelValAcuraDealers.com. By the way, Nick Maton has another hit. He's 3 for 4. The kid belongs in the show. 5-5 Phils. We'll keep you posted. Right now, back to the NFL. The draft is a week from tomorrow. John Clayton from the Washington Post. A lot of trade possibilities, and he maps out a bunch of them, and one includes the Philadelphia Eagles. So we'll get his thoughts on that. Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, and Andy Weidel all spoke today, and they said something that makes me think a trade could be happening. We'll see if John agrees. He has a trade involving the Eagles happening as well, so let's bring him into the conversation now here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. John Clayton from the Washington Post is back with us. We are almost 1 week officially from the draft. John, it's good to have you back, man. How you been?
Good. How are you?
All is well, and I know that a lot of people this time, they're throwing all the stuff out there, but trades. Why, in your opinion, do we think there could be a lot of trades in this particular draft?
Well, the big reason is that the pandemic caused so many issues right now in college football. I mean, you have some teams that played 4 or less games. You've got 7 or 8 opt-outs as first-round candidates, including 3 of the top 4 offensive linemen. And then the big thing is that this draft is so thin because, in a normal year. Now, again, I know the Denver Post counted this up by conference, and it was a total of 1,046 players that went for what's called the super senior season, staying in college in 2021 and getting that second year as a senior in college. And so that leaves, little less than 700 players eligible for this year's draft, which means it's going to be really tough to get any kind of good undrafted player. The list is going to be so thin. And when you start to get into the 6th and 7th rounds, and maybe even the 5th round, you're maybe getting guys with undraftable grades. And so because of that, and particularly at certain positions, because I can't find more than 2 defensive tackles that'll go in the first 2 rounds, and you may not have one, maybe just one, go in the first round. Then you look at the safety position, that's thin. You look at tight end, that's really thin. And there's a lot of defensive spots that just aren't there. The edge rushers, they're more in the middle first round picks than they are anything else. And so because of that, you can get pretty close to the same player if you want to try to move down. But also, if you want a certain type of player, it's probably better to try to move up.
Very good explanation from John. Now, as you write in the Washington Post article, the intrigue starts at 4, but that doesn't mean there's going to be a pick at 4. There could be a trade at 4.
Yeah, in fact, it's even getting more interesting because, talking to some people down in Atlanta today, they're now starting to think that Arthur Blank is making that push to take a quarterback. And also, they could be doing that just to try to entice a team to try to trade up to go, whether it's going to be Detroit, Denver, somebody else, to move up and take that pick. But here's the interesting thing. If indeed it goes to Mac Jones going at the 3rd pick, they could stand and take Justin Fields, or they can possibly go take Trey Lance. But then we find out today that there's a little bit of an epilepsy issue right now with Justin Fields. He has it in the family. I mean, his family's been able to pretty much get through that by their mid-20s, but you wonder if that's going to affect things. So, yeah, it gets even more dicey trying to figure out the draft and see if there's going to be 5 quarterbacks go in the top 9.
Right. Now, there's 2 other spots that are interesting. 7, Detroit, and Denver, who a lot of people think might want a quarterback too. But how does New England kind of play a role in those 2 spots?
Well, where they play a role, if the 5th quarterback is there, they can trade up now. Because if Denver can't get Teddy Bridgewater, then there's a good likelihood that they'll have to take a quarterback if one's there. Detroit, it's up and down whether they're going to do a quarterback, because again, they do have Jared Goff, and they did take $20 million and bite the bullet on that as far as, getting $20 million off his base salary, replace it with signing bonus to free up some cap room. But, the one team now they can possibly trade with would be Carolina, because Carolina did get Sam Darnold. They have the 8th pick in the draft, and so they can jump the Denver Broncos and maybe get that 5th quarterback if he falls.
John Clayton, Washington Post. The NFC East teams are all interesting. You got Washington, who could trade up for a quarterback. You have the Giants, who could get out of their spot for a quarter because somebody else wants a quarterback. So, and then Philadelphia, who could move up because they want a corner. So the three NFC East teams seem very interesting on draft night.
Yeah, they really do, because again, you can see that the way it's shaping up, the top 9 picks in the draft right now, if there's no trades, are probably going to be offensive players, because you're going to have Kyle, you're going to have a tight end in Kyle Pitts, you're going to have Lamar Chase, wide receiver. You then got the move to get Penny Sewell, and so you throw all those things together, and that means that you may not get a draft pick as a defensive player until 10 with the Dallas Cowboys. But knowing that the Dallas Cowboys are likely going to take Patrick Surtain from Alabama, then you can see that Philadelphia might want to jump them, because they do have the leverage now with the capital, with the trade that they made with San Francisco and Miami, and you move up a couple spots and you get what they might be determining to be the best defensive player in this draft, and a corner that will go on the other side of Darius Slay and really help the defense.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to see Philadelphia jump up in front, get that cornerback, and then Dallas is standing there, and then you got all the stuff that could happen right behind. But the Bears, you say, they could go from 20 to 11. That would be a pretty big move. You wonder how much they would have to do, but that would give the Giants a chance to kind of move back and then feel some things out. Where do you think the Giants are kind of looking if they say, all right, you want 11, we'll move back? What message is that from New York and what they might go for?
Well, and again, this is something the Giants never do. And now you can see that they're addressing it and thinking they can do it. And part of the reason is, now, I don't know if Micah Parsons, the linebacker, is there at 11, that they make that trade, because you can argue that he's one of the best defensive players in the draft and would probably be the second defensive player taken up to that point. But also, they're looking for an edge rusher. They're looking for a offensive lineman, and you can go down to 20 and maybe get an acceptable thing, along with getting value from the Chicago Bears. It's not going to be Washington, because the Giants aren't going to help out the Redskins in getting a quarterback or getting what they might want, because they're also looking at linebackers and tackles. So, but yeah, Chicago could do that and move up, and they could probably have to pay a lot to the Giants, but I think the Giants could take that.
John Clayton, Washington Post. All right, this trade would be very interesting, because this never happens, but the Packers taking a wide receiver, moving into the 21 spot with Indianapolis to take a wide receiver. I don't think they've ever done that for Aaron Rodgers.
No, I mean, in fact, they starved them last year, and they really kind of starved them the last couple years. I know they've won 13 games in each of those seasons, but they didn't add a tight end, they didn't add a wide receiver, and so far they haven't done anything so far this year. So, in fact, they haven't even added an unrestricted free agent. So, again, I know that they're going to be looking at a couple linebackers. That's something that they're going to be looking at, but they could move up and get to maybe the 4th or 5th best receiver. And of course, Chris Ballard, the Indianapolis general manager, is always one willing to trade down. And what they're looking at is they need a left tackle, but they can also take Quentin Nelson and put him at left tackle, and then take a guy on the offensive line, and you can move down 8 spots or whatever, get some draft capital, and then be able to help fill out their offensive line.
All right, John Clayton, the Washington Post, he's got a bunch of trade scenarios, some possibilities over at his Washington Post article for this week. And another one of them that is kind of interesting here would be the Bills, because there's a lot of people who feel they need a tight end. Philly's got Zach Ertz. They're at number 30. You say the Bills could actually move up because they need an edge rusher as well.
Yeah, somebody for the defensive end, because they just need a little bit more pass rush, because that's something that was a little bit missing last year and something that they like to address. I mean, it's also the possibility they could trade back, but they're really gearing up right now, particularly as good as the season was for the Bills in the playoffs and the Bills overall. I think that if they can go up, they could really help themselves out with the better pass rushers, because again, I don't see a good edge rusher dropping all the way down to that pick for Buffalo. And so to get an edge rusher, because you got maybe 4 of them that would go probably between 14 and maybe 25, they can move up and get an edge rusher.
Yeah, I think the point you made was great about earlier about how 9 offensive players could be the first 9 picks in this draft. So you might see teams at the back end moving all over the place to try to get these defensive players as they kind of fall. But what about a team like Miami, who've already moved twice, but you said you think there's a possibility they can move a 3rd time?
Yeah, because I think they can move back. Now, there's a talk that maybe they would move down from 6, but why would you do that? because they're going to get Lamar Chase, and if they don't get Lamar Chase, they could get Kyle Pitts. And so now I don't know if Penny Sewell would drop to him, but they would take Penny Sewell. But you figure that it's very hard for Cincinnati to pass on an offensive tackle because of how bad their line is. I know that Joe Burrow in Cincinnati would love to reunite with Lamar Chase, and so that is a consideration. But I think in the end, what you can see from Miami, they're sitting there with the 18th pick. Okay,
right.
A lot of people think they're going to go for Najee Harris, the running back, but you can trade back and maybe get him in the 20s, because one thing that Najee is a very good back, and I think he's the best back in the draft, but he's not a home run hitter. That seems to be the idea. So taking him at 18 might be a little bit high, but they do want a running back, and he probably would be the running back they would take. But you can move back into the mid 20s and get some value, and then add to the team, because you can see they're loading up on draft choices.
Yep, they sure are. Another team, I want to go back to Philly. John Clayton, the Washington Post here real quick, because you mentioned the Patriots trying to trade up. Now, do you think there would be a quarterback at number 12? Because we know Howie Roseman, they like to go line, offensive line, defensive line. And if a quarterback is there at 12, does Roseman say, you know what, I'll move back and I'll get myself another offensive lineman? Do you think a quarterback makes it to 12?
I don't think so. No, particularly if Atlanta now is true in thinking they're going to take the fourth quarterback in the draft, because now you have one that would be left, whether it's going to be Justin Fields or Trey Lance. And if that's going to be the case, I can't see him or that last quarterback getting past Denver, or maybe even getting past Detroit. And so that makes the tough part. And then that somehow, some way, the Patriots might be able to get up if Lance is there at the 8th pick. So I think that there's no chance right now, because it looks like 5 are going to go in the top 9.
Wow, that would be wild. Now, when we hear so much, John, about teams who draft best player available versus, need, these quarterbacks can't all be on the board as these teams' best player available, right? I mean, I guess there's a special side little thing when you're dealing with quarterbacks.
Yeah, but of course, I mean, the issue is that next year's draft class for quarterbacks is not going to be that good, from what people are starting to say. I know it's going to be a better draft, and you're going to see more deals done for picks for next year's draft. Like, for example, so far of the 18 trades, 19 had involved 2022, 2023 picks.
Wow.
Because you have 1,046 players who have that super senior season, which means that they went back for that second college year, leaving less than 700 guys for this year's draft. And so because of that, you're going to see a lot of trades like that. But no, I think that if you're going to be, you took a guy in the second round last year that you didn't know was going to be on the field. They haven't guaranteed that he's going to be a starting quarterback, but it's like, how many quarterbacks do you want to take? Because then you're talking about 3 in a matter of 5 years, 4 years. That's a lot.
No question. And Howie Roseman brought up today, he actually said, look, I'm already looking ahead to next year where we have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. Like, he already made that, hey, we're already set up there. So it would be interesting to see if they try to get another pick in that draft next year based on what you just said. And a lot of teams are also on draft night jockeying around trying to add picks in next year's draft. By the way, Philly has 11 picks, the most in the draft. So Howie Roseman plus 11 picks probably equals a lot of action for Philly on draft night. Agree?
Oh, it should be fascinating, because again, this is going to be all over the place, because again, it's without doubt the weirdest draft I've ever seen, but it's also a draft that just has so many intriguing type of things with the quarterbacks, the lack of defensive players in certain positions, and the abundance of offensive tackles and offensive linemen and wide receivers.
John Clayton, check out his Washington Post story on trade possibilities. See what your favorite team could do on draft day, which is a week from tomorrow. And you can hear the draft right here on 97.3 ESPN. John, take care, pal.
Okay, thanks.
All right, there he goes. John Clayton here on the Sports Bash. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Just to go back and reiterate that trade that he has posted at the Washington Post, which is Philadelphia would move back from 6 to 12 for the first rounder from Miami, and then move back into the top 10 at number 9 and take Patrick Surtain. He basically says the Eagles' objective, if they move back into the 10, would be to get Alabama corner Patrick Surtain. His reasoning is because Dallas is in the mix right there. They need to jump in front of Dallas. And I agree. I said this earlier. If they stay at 12, I think they take a wide out or if a corner's there. If they move back further, they're going offensive line. If they move up, it's because they want to get that corner. I'd be pretty shocked. I wouldn't hate it if they went up and got Waddle or Smith, but I think if they go up, it's because they want they want that corner, and they want the corner that they want. They don't want to wait and find out what corner falls to us. They want the one they want, and if they want the one they want, they know they have to trade up. Why? Dallas. That's why. Great stuff. John Clayton. You only hear him right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up next hour, more NFL. Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, who covers the league nationally. We will get his opinions on what he heard from Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni today. I will give you my thoughts on what I heard from those because I thought there were some clues into the draft, and I don't think there's a quarterback competition here at all, and I'll tell you why. Coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And right now, Sports Bash Cash. It's your chance at $1,000. All right, we're back in the 5 o'clock hour. It's the final hour of the show, but it could be the most fun. Geoff Kerr, 525, talks a little NFL. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Hope you're enjoying your Wednesday. Phils are locked in a 5-5. Bryce Harper tied it up with a Bryce bomb. I think Alec Boehm at the plate right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Boehm gave me a little something, little how do you do, a little something to be pumped up about. Alec Boehm at the plate. I'll give you the results coming up in just a minute. Well, hopefully he does something before a minute's up. Nick Maton, by the way, 3 for 4. He's had a big day again for the Phils. All right. By the way, it's bottom of the ninth, 5-5. They were up 4-1. Bullpen kind of coughed it up. Bullpen gave him some issues last 2 nights. Brogdon didn't pitch well last night, and Kinsler gave up a 3-run bomb to tie the game up today. All right, so I got a lot. We had the press conference today from the Eagles that we were really chewing in. Miss John Clayton on ESPN. Glad you have him on. Yeah, John's been on just about every week throughout the football season. So, John Clayton's great. I think he's one of the smartest football guys out there. Really good and very plugged in. He's on pretty much every week we have him on. We don't have him on in like a regular time slot, like every week at this day and this time, but we typically will have him on once a week when our schedules can kind of match up. He'll give me his availabilities, and if we can fit John on, we certainly will. I mean, I think John's one of the most respected football voices out there, and giving you the opportunity to hear John Clayton, Sal Palantonio, Adam Kaplan, Jeff Mosher, Jeff Kerr. By the way, Kerr is excellent, and we've got, we worked out something. He's going to be on 3 times a week, maybe more in the football season. So I hope you guys are enjoying Jeff Kerr. He's joining me in about 20 minutes from now. All right. So a lot to unpack from this press conference from today. And I'm discussing it in this manner. 1, I thought we got some interesting clues. My phone is updating, and it's like driving me nuts. I see the thing like going crazy, and it's got all these different things. You ever get the message on your phone? Boehm struck out, by the way, which is disappointing. You ever get the message on your phone that says it wants to update, and then you keep hitting no, I don't want to do it now, I'll do it later, and it asks you every single day? Like, can it just be like, I don't want to update my phone. I like the operating system that it's currently using. Stop asking me. Me hitting pause is my way of telling you I don't want to do. It's like you've got at work, we have to update our passwords like every so often, and it's like every 2 weeks, I feel like. If somebody breaks into my email, it's on me. You stop making me change my email, all that kind of crazy stuff. This phone is just every 2 weeks, I feel like they're giving me a new operating system. Enough with it. By the way, why is Atlantic City trending? Anybody have any idea why Atlantic City's trending on my Twitter feed right now? I'll have to check that out. Let me, because I don't want to get off what I'm looking at because I have my notes for the show in front of me. All right, so I thought we got some interesting clues on the draft today in the Roseman presser. I thought Sirianni was a breath of fresh air. I don't understand why people don't like Sirianni today. I don't understand it. I thought Sirianni was a breath of fresh air. Brad Miller with a base hit, by the way. If you didn't like Sirianni, why? Tell me. 609-403-0973. How did you not like Sirianni today? I thought he took over the press conference. I thought he was the star of the show. And don't read into the Hurts stuff. He's the quarterback. Jalen Hurts is the quarterback of this football team. Period, point blank. I mean, unless they make a crazy trade leading up to opening day, he's the quarterback. There's no question about that. What are they going to start, Joe Flacco? Come on. I think it was pretty clear that they want the message from the press conference today is they want everybody battling for positions. That's what it was. They want everybody to battle for positions. They don't want to hand anybody anything. That was essentially that. So my first take on the press conference today, Sirianni was a breath of fresh air. I don't understand how people are giving this guy grief over rock, paper, scissors. If you listen to the rock, paper, scissors, somebody just got a base hit. Harper's coming around, and the Phillies just won the game. Who hit that ball? Knapp, Andrew Knapp, with an RBI game winner. Remember that home run that he hit? That was the game-winning home run. That was about the only hit I saw him get all that 2 years ago. And then he just got one last. So he's a game-winning hero. All right, so Hurts. Sirianni, to me, was a breath of fresh air. Sorry, my thoughts are all over the place now because I got the Phillies game here. He just gets a hit. All that's going on. People are messaging text messages and putting message in the comments section over here. All right, I will get to this comment in just a second, but I want to finish my thought here. I'm going to get back on track, I promise. Sirianni was a breath of fresh air. I thought Sirianni was the star of the show. He took over the press conference and told, what he says to me is he has a voice. He has a voice in there, and he's getting the ear of the people and saying, look, I love the quote of the day for me, and I don't know if, Josh, if you could find this one, is when he said that there was a time where the video, and he's like, look, I want to show you on the video what this guy does and how we would use him. You know, he went through this whole breakdown of that. I thought that was a really good breakdown. I thought this was a really good breakdown. When he was asked about the X receivers in his offense, I thought he really broke it down and really explained why there is no quote unquote prototypical X receiver.
What does an X receiver look like? Well, I've had different X's. I've had T.Y. Hilton, who was 5'9", 180 pounds. He played X for us. I've had Dwayne Bowe, who was 6'2", 220 pounds. He played X for us. I had Keenan Allen, who was 6'3", 200. And all these guys that I'm saying, T.Y. was fast. Keenan was quick, not fast. Dwayne Bowe was powerful. They all played different. So it's just a matter of, can that guy do what you want that person to do on that outside? Can he? And really, when you say X, it's can he win one-on-one matchups consistently?
Yeah. Is he your best receiver? That doesn't mean he's 6'2" and he's your best receiver. Tyreek Hill isn't 6'2". He's their best receiver. On the other hand, you get a guy like Travis Fulgham, who's a bigger bodied guy. I don't think he's your best receiver. So there is no prototypical X receiver in Nick Sirianni's offense. He said, I've had T.Y. Hilton, 5'9", Dwayne Bowe, 6'2". I've had them all. So I thought that was a very interesting thing there. I also like, the bite that I was talking about, which was there's a story that he's talking about where he's got the video on and he's calling Roseman over and he's like, hey, come watch this. See this guy right here? This is how we would use this guy in our offense. So if you can find guys who do what this guy does, scout those guys. I also loved when he told the story,
get the combine,
about where the game planning and the draft planning. Take a listen.
All the work, like if you think you're just going to call a play when the 40-second clock starts to tick down, you're crazy, right? You ain't going to do that. You did all the work prior to on Monday through Saturday to get ready for Sunday. It's the same thing. It's just a longer process with the draft, which I think is so cool because Howie can kind of put himself in my shoes and I can put myself in Howie's shoes. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool the way he broke that down is, hey, what I do all week long getting ready for a game, that's what these guys are doing now. They're preparing and getting us ready for this season. So the three takeaways that stood out the most to me today. 1, Sirianni was a breath of fresh air. He was the star of the show. 2, don't read into the Hurt stuff. He's the quarterback. Mike, I don't know why you were all so set on Hurts as the quarterback. If Jalen comes in and has that horrible completion percentage like last year, Flacco will be the quarterback by week 4. All right, let's pause right there. Jalen Hurts had a poor completion percentage last year. Josh, what was the stat that you gave me as to why on his completion percentage? Because if you look at his completion percentage and just go off the number, it was not good enough. He was, 55%, which is not good at all.
So his completion percentage for the year was 54%.
Not good. But
if you take away all the throwaways from the Packers game and the Saints game, his completion percentage.
2 games.
His completion
impacted
percentage
it big time.
66%. So he goes from 52% to 66%.
54
for the year. But I mean, those 2 games, he was 52, I believe. So I have the article written at 973ESPN.com, but he went from in the low 50s to 66%.
Right.
If you get rid of the throwaways.
In college, he was a 65% passer.
And by the way, his final year at Oklahoma, he was top 5 in the country in completion percentage.
No, he's freshman year 62, sophomore year 60, junior year 73, and his final year at Oklahoma 69.7. So to me, his completion percentage is not an issue. So to kind of, and I don't think the guy was attacking him so much. He's saying, but if he comes in and if his completion percentage is 52%, 54%, they might have a problem. I don't see that being a problem. And he says Flacco is a big guy and still has a strong arm. What I think is underrated about Hurts is how strong his arm is.
Hurts' arm is way stronger than people realize. And they don't look at him as a strong arm quarterback because partly his height. A lot of times, and this is something I've heard guys like Jesse Palmer, who you've had on the Super Bowl Road before, talk about, the quarterback coach guru. People evaluate quarterbacks wrong sometimes when it comes to arm strength because they're looking at certain measurables like, yards per attempt or things like that, when actually the question is, if the guy throws the ball, is the wind going to blow in the other direction going to catch it? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is no, then he's got a strong arm.
Yeah. No, I think if you watch Hurts, he's got a very strong arm. 6'1", 220. You talked about his height. He's 6'1". He's not 6'4", but he's got a strong arm. He can make the throws. And accuracy was not an issue for him in college. I think it was an issue for him last year for a variety of reasons. Josh just chronicled. I remember reading his story and reading that number in there about the throwaways. And I don't know that was chronicled all that much. Over on the text board, 609-403-0973. I agree with you, Mike. Well, thank you. Let's just leave it at that. We don't even need to say what you agree with. No. He says, I was a Doug fan and always will be, but Sirianni brings some enthusiasm I haven't seen in a long time. He's a football fiend, and it pours out. Yeah, he gets juiced and pressers are weird. Who cares? I want that guy on the sidelines. I agree. I talked about it earlier. You could have – all right, there's the 3 faces of press conferences. It's like Mick Foley. I'm Dude Love, I'm Cactus Jack, and I'm Mankind. People are like, what? And other people are marking out over there, popping like crazy. Wait, what? You just went Dude Love, Cactus Jack, bang, bang. Yeah. The 3 faces of press conferences. You got Bill Belichick, who will give you nothing. We're on to Cincinnati. And people will criticize him. You have Nick Sirianni, who was as energetic as could be, and people are going to criticize him. You've got Doug Peterson, very all shucks, and people will criticize him. There isn't a guy who could go up there and that we all universally will like and say, that guy hit it out of the park. I thought Sirianni was great today. He was a breath of fresh air. Listen to this. This is the comment. Josh got this. Good job on pulling this out. Sirianni on how he uses the video to explain to Roseman the type of players he wants him to look for in the draft.
We are trying to explain to Andy and Howie, how do we explain to our players how we want to run a play? The videotape. Hey guys, let's look at the videotape. I got a screen behind me, guys. That's where we would watch tape on. Boom, let's watch the videotape. here's what we're looking for, players out there, Eagle players out there. Here's what we want it to look like. Well, it's the same thing here in the scouting process. Hey, here's how we would use this player. Here's the skill set that this player has, and here's how we've used this type of player in the past.
By the way, when is ESPN going to have quarterback camp with Nick Sirianni, replacing the John Gruden show? I mean, he's going to be excellent when he's done doing Monday Night Football or wide receiver camp, right? Boom. This is the play right here. This is how we're going to use them. The other part of it is I thought there was another clue about offensive line. So we'll talk with Geoff Kerr about this coming up in about 8 minutes, excuse me. The way that I see it is I feel like there's a couple things that could happen. The Eagles trade up to go get Patrick Surtain if that's their favorite guy, or J.C. Horn. They're going to have to move to 7, 8, or 9. If they want that corner, they move up. They stay at 12 and take the other guy, Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn, or one of the wide receivers. I don't think they move up for a wide receiver unless, for whatever reason, Pitts or Chase start to fall. And if they get a call that John Clayton just talked about, he doesn't think this will happen, but if it does, if there's a quarterback on the board at 12 and they get a call from New England or Chicago, somebody that wants to move into that 12 spot, and they can get more draft picks, because what did John Clayton say? He talked about this is a weak draft, and next year's going to be loaded because of all of these. I didn't even realize this. He said there's over 1,000 players who would be seniors entering the draft who have opted to stay in college and be seniors again. So this is another big thing. He said there's going to be undraftable players in the 5th round, guys who aren't even listed as draftable. And that means undrafted rookies are going to be hard to find talent in the 6th and 7th round. So the Eagles trying to load up on early picks and load up on picks in next year's draft. Pretty interesting. Another thing that Jalen Hurts, by the way, somebody brought this up. In college, his yards per attempt were 11, over 10 yards a throw. Strong arm. Hurts didn't have one game over 60% last year. Nobody said that he did. We said that his completion percentage in college was very high. And if you listen to what he had to say, it was his completion percentage was dropped because of the fact that he was throwing the ball away a lot because their offensive line was pretty terrible. And I think the offense was just very vanilla for him last year, to be honest with you. I really think they did a bad – I said it all year with Doug. I thought he did a bad job with Rager. I thought he did a bad job with Hurts. I just don't think he had a very – I think he had a very vanilla offense. I don't think you can't win with a very vanilla offense. I just think that they didn't have a lot of talent, so they had to strip it all down. All right, we're going to get into more of it with Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports. He's going to join me on the other side. We'll continue the NFL conversation. I know Geoff was listening to the press conference today, so I know he has a reaction. You're going to want to hear it coming up because it's going to be good. If you have questions for Geoff Kerr, NFL writer from CBS Sports, who focuses a lot on the Eagles. They kind of do these regional NFL writers, kind of focuses a lot on the Eagles and the NFL. So we'll talk with him coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live. Sports Bash brought to you by Clark's Moving Storage in South Jersey. For your next local or long-distance move, Clark's Moving Storage is your first call. They're dependable and always show up. Visit them at clarksmoving.net. All right, welcome back. Sports Best Live 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill, taking it till the top of the hour tonight. We got the sound of the day. Stick around for that. Our great guest today, Nick Sirianni, I thought stole the show in the press conference. Also, the clues that the Eagles gave us today. I thought the biggest clue was when they answered the question regarding Isaac Sayabala and talked about him possibly being a center down the road. Geoff Kerr is going to join me in just a minute here. He just messaged me. He's getting something up with his computer, so he'll be on in just a second. I thought Sirianni stole the show. I thought that they gave us a couple clues into drafting an offensive lineman, which I now feel I don't want him at all. I don't want to, but I'm just saying I feel like that's a stronger possibility now. I didn't think that they would really go that route, and I now feel that that's a stronger possibility than I felt before. And the other clue or takeaway from the press conference today was that I don't think people were talking about they didn't name Hurts the starter. They wouldn't commit to him. The message of the day was competition. We're playing rock, paper, scissors. We're so competitive. We want competitive people. That was the message, right? That's what they basically were trying to get across. He said we play games with the prospects to judge their competitiveness. And people are taking it like, oh, that's really childish. No, we can't get them in the building. We want to try to talk to these guys and find out if they love football.
I played a couple of them at rock, paper, scissors, right? That was as easy as that. Rock, paper, scissors. Let's see how competitive you are. I'm competitive. I'm going to be talking trash to them. Did you talk trash back to me? Right? Jeopardy. There's different ways to do it. It looks a lot of different ways, but our coaches got so creative with this. Like Jeff Stoutland, Brian Johnson, like they did just such Aaron Moorhead. They all did a great job, right? Tracy Rocker, Jeremiah Washburn, they all did a great job of just figuring out how to compete because everyone's compete looks a little different.
Yeah. And people took that rock, paper, scissors as like, what the? If you didn't understand what he was saying, that's a you problem. He was asked about not being able to get people in the building. How do they find out? And he says, we like to talk to these guys. We like to really get a sense from them. And he basically was like, we can't get him in the building. I can't see the guy. I can't talk to him, but I get him on Zoom. And we get the ability to play rock, paper, scissors. If I'm competitive, let's see if you can beat me at rock, paper, scissors. I don't got a problem with that. I don't understand why people go crazy about stuff. People amaze me. People literally amaze. It's the fact that he said rock, paper, scissors, and they didn't hear anything else. It was like, wait a minute, rock, paper, scissors? What is this guy? He was making a comment, and the message of the rock, paper, scissors about the competitiveness goes all the way through the organization is, hey, we're not going to just name a starting quarterback. He's got to win that position. Why does anybody have a problem with that? We shouldn't have a problem with that. We should not have a problem that he wants the quarterback to win the job instead of being handed the job. I know it's funny. When the guy gets coddled, we complain that he's coddled. Now they don't want to coddle the guy. They want him to win the position, and now we want to say, why wouldn't they commit to him? Jalen Hurts doesn't need to be coddled. Jalen Hurts doesn't need to be told he's the starting quarterback. The last quarterback left because he needed to be told. He needed to have that kind of, hey, you're the starting quarterback. And look, I loved Wentz. I was a big fan of Wentz, but you don't have to tell me that I'm the starting quarterback. You know how many different people that I have brought in to work with me here? And never did I feel or say in my mind, man, I'm bringing a guy in here who's really talented. I wonder if he'll just take my position. You know, he's making less money than I am. They could just get rid of me and put that guy on. No. And that's Jalen Hurts. They don't have to pat Jalen Hurts on the back and say, hey, man, you're the starter. Have you known Jalen Hurts' career? Do you know anything about Jalen Hurts' career? He doesn't need to be told he's the starter. He's quite okay earning the position. He's been through a lot. He's been through quite a lot. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Hit me up over there on the text board if you have NFL questions you want to get to Geoff. Geoff Kerr going to be joining me in just a second here. It's funny. We do the video stream so we can get on the video. And much like my phone, the laptop of his just had a restart because of the iOS, the operating system needed to update. It's crazy. Mine just did the same thing too. Boom, my phone just was going crazy over here, updating, restarting. Right? Both of us at the same time. I mean, mine just finished. But, we live in a world now where 50% of the people don't agree with the other 50%, if you haven't noticed. Right? 50% of the people will agree with you. The other 50% don't agree with you at all. There is no middle ground. The country we have created is built off of winning and losing. There is no middle ground. But many of these conversations we have, there's middle ground to be had. Multiple things can be true at the same time. Jalen Hurts doesn't need to be told that he's the starting quarterback, right? He doesn't need to be told that. He shouldn't need to be told that. All right, there's Geoff. Let's bring him in. We're going to be a little shorter with Geoff today, but we'll try our best to get as many things hit on as we can. All right, Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, covers the NFL. He's back. All right, a lot of people up in arms, Geoff, that the Eagles didn't come out and say, hey, Jalen Hurts, you're the starting quarterback. I don't have a problem with that. The message in the press conference to me was competition. We like competition so much that we're playing rock, paper, scissors on Zoom. So if they're playing rock, paper, scissors on Zoom, they're not going to tell a guy that you have a job. He's got to earn the job. But did you have a problem that they're not committing to Jalen Hurts?
Well, absolutely not, Mike. And one of the reasons is because Nick Sirianni is the new head coach. Remember, he did not draft Jalen Hurts. And my whole philosophy is it was the same thing with Doug Pearson and Carson Wentz. It was the same thing with Chip Kelly and Michael Vick / Nick Foles. I didn't draft these guys. Andy Reid drafted Donovan McNabb. It's the same thing. I didn't draft him. We're not going to him right now.
Right. No, he didn't draft him, but I also feel like, come on, do you really think that they're going to have a competition between Jalen Hurts and Joe Flacco? I mean, do people really think that that's a possibility?
No, there isn't one. And here's the thing. I wish they would commit to Jalen Hurts as the starter because ultimately he's going to be the starter. And I don't think Jalen Hurts cares if there's a competition for a shot or not. But I guess where they're kind of leaving the door open is what if they trade up? What if they trade up to 7 or 8 and there's one of those quarterbacks on the board that they like that, I don't know, maybe Trey Lance falls. I don't think like him.
That's a possibility. But what about what Roseman said today? I thought this was kind of interesting. When he was asked about the call that he got from Miami, and he said, well, when I found out that it was San Francisco moving to 3, that told me they were taking a quarterback, which means 3 quarterbacks were going, and that's when I felt, okay, that told me they don't want to take a quarterback in the first round, right?
Yeah, that's what that would tell me. I mean, unless plans change, obviously, they're not going to tip their poker hand. But yeah, Howie Roseman's absolutely right. Once San Fran went up to 3, so you got quarterback 1, quarterback 2, quarterback 3. That's the first time that's happened since 1999. There's a good chance a quarterback could go 4. We could see 4 quarterbacks go with the first 4 picks for the first time ever. And Howie Roseman probably figured, you know what, I'm not going to get my guy. I value that first-round pick. And he mentioned that time in and time out during this press conference, how valuable having that second first-round pick was because that Colts one is not guaranteed. Now, if Carson Wentz does his job, they'll have 3 first-round picks in 2022. But Howie Roseman wanted that extra first-round pick. He wanted leverage in case he has to move up again. Now, he doesn't need to use that first-round pick to move up 3 or 4 spots, but I like his thinking there. It was, okay, San Fran traded up to 3. We were going to trade up. We were going to go to 3. We couldn't get that. Let's move on.
Right. Now, John Clayton was on with me last hour, and he said, from what he is hearing, is that this draft is very weak, 5th round on. A lot of undraftable players. And one of the reasons was you could opt back in to be a senior again. And there's over 1,000 players who opted back in to go back to college. Those guys would have normally been in the draft class. So a lot of undraftable players, which means those players are now going to be littered into next year's class. So Roseman brought it up today. Hey, we have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds next year. It sounds like a lot of people are trying to get those picks next year. So I wouldn't be surprised if Roseman tries to add more picks next year.
I heard the same thing John did. Like after about the middle of the 4th round is when the draft class just goes bad, like really bad. Like this is a bad year to draft defensive tackles. There just isn't any. Like guys that would normally be 6th-round picks are going to be 3rd or 4th-round picks this year. You don't want that. So yeah, the bottom of this draft class is not deep at all. And the fact that the Eagles have 11 picks kind of scares me, but I feel like they're going to maneuver and try to get picks next year. Be like, oh look, we'll trade our 2021 5th-round pick or one of our 2021 6th-round or 2 of them. And what we'll do is we'll get a 2022 4th for a 2022 5th-round pick, and we'll try to load up there. And you're right, Mike. A lot of these seniors did opt in. I was actually shocked because I followed Penn State a lot. I was surprised a lot of their seniors didn't opt in. Michael Bennett was one of them, the center. I thought he would be one that would come back. Obviously, that didn't happen because, look, he has a chance to go be a 3rd-round pick in this draft. Why not? So, yeah, I think a lot of these players, they looked at their draft stats and they said, you know what, I'm not going to be a 4th or 5th-round pick this year. I had a bad year last year because of COVID. I want that real college experience. And I think that's what a lot of those players did. So that's what really hurt this draft class. It's very loaded up top. Like 1 through 12 is great. 1 through 16, good. But after 16, it kind of dives a little bit. This receiver class is deep. This cornerback class is deep. Fortunately, the Eagles need both.
Very, very fortunately, this is the draft to get the holes they have. What about offensive line? Because I thought there was a clue today that says offensive line could be a pick. He was asked directly about Ali Vera-Tucker and Rashawn Slater, but he brought up Sayamala as a center. And that kind of said to me, Kelsey retires, they move him over, got to replace Sayamala. Maybe I could get that guy at number 12 or even move back and get that guy at 15, get that guy at 18 or 20. I didn't think offensive line was a possibility, but they love drafting offensive linemen, and hearing them say that today, that was a little breadcrumb for me.
Eagles and offensive linemen are synonymous, and especially if they can't play year one. Like the only ones that seem to play right away are Lane Johnson or Sean Andrews, guys they draft high or trade up, 12, 13 spots for. But if they draft Elijah Vera-Tucker, I am not against that pick at all, specifically because he could play guard right away. He could play tackle right away. And again, as you mentioned, Mike, Isaac Seumalo, center. He is going to be the heir apparent to Jason Kelsey. I have no doubt about that. So they're going to need a guard at some point. Brandon Brooks, he's no spring chicken. He's on the north side of 30 now. So you're going to need a guy there. But Elijah Vera-Tucker can start today as an NFL guard. That's how good he is. Christian Darrisaw, same thing. He can start today as a guard. They both can play tackle, but they are going to be dominant guards in this league. I would not be surprised if the Eagles went and I don't want to say they'll draft Vera-Tucker at 12, but I think he's going to be there between 15 to 18. I think that's a guy you get. I have Vera-Tucker linked to the Oakland Raiders. I thought that would be a great pick for them. And if he's there at 17 or 18, if the Eagles trade down, I don't mind them doing that. I really don't mind picking them at 12, honestly. But again, this all depends who's on the board.
Right. If there's a corner on the board, J.C. Horn, and you take Vera-Tucker, I think you might be questioned there, no?
I would probably be throwing things if J.C. Horn was on the board and you took Elijah Vera-Tucker. I'd be okay with the pick, but I would still be – I wouldn't be happy. I'd be like, come on, Howie. Like, what are we doing here? Get a day one starter.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing. You mentioned, all right, yeah, those guys can play guard right away, but they're not starting over Brandon Brooks. Are you going to swap them out and play him over Isaac Seumalo, who was pretty solid last year, or are you taking a guy in the first round who's essentially sitting for a year?
He's basically going to sit for a year unless it injury.
Swallow on this team.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the thing, Mike. If Jason Kelsey gets hurt, then at least you have a backup plan. So you have depth for this year, which is key. But I'm assuming 2021 is going to be Jason Kelsey's last year. Again, he could change his mind, but he always seems to be getting closer and closer to actually retiring. So if he does, you move Sayamala to center, you got Vera-Tucker at guard. Fine. But not this year's class, next year's class, I hear they're going to be deep with offensive linemen. maybe you go that route. Maybe you draft a tackle and move him inside the guard. Or, maybe you give a guy like, I'm not saying Lane Johnson would never move the guard, but, maybe you consider that to prolong his career a bit. I mean, Jason Peters entertained that possibility for a brief second.
Yeah, and I thought, Jack Driscoll played well last year. I thought Herbig had some moments. I mean, the problem was they could play as a singular guy next to other good players. If you put all four of them out there and then switch their partner every single week, they're going to start to slip a little bit. Like Jack Driscoll, if he's your starting right tackle for full 16 games next to Brandon Brooks, he probably does a pretty solid job. But if he's playing right tackle one week and his right guard is Matt Pryor, then the next week it's Nate Herbig, and then the next week it's somebody different, that's going to affect him too. So I think people need to keep that in mind. Also, I thought, for me, I thought Sirianni was a breath of fresh air. I thought he was the star of the show. People are ripping the guy today.
I loved it. I loved it. His passion. He's like you and me, Mike. We're passionate about radio. We're passionate about talking Eagles football. That's Nick Sirianni's element, talking football. I'm glad he unleashed the rock, paper, scissors thing and to find someone's competitiveness. I love it. I just love how excited the guy was. It looked like, as Howie Roseman would put it, a vanilla press conference, and then all of a sudden Nick Sirianni started talking.
Yeah. I felt like Sirianni was the guy. The first half of the press conference was, hey, it's my first week at work. I don't know anybody here. And then by the second half of the press conference, he had been there for a couple of weeks and he started to feel more comfortable, to the point that Roseman acquiesced to him and said, when he was asked about the ex-receivers, that question was directed at Roseman, and Roseman said, well, why don't you answer that question?
Yeah, and Nick did a great job at answering it. That's the thing I really like about Nick Sirianni, and why I want to say I'm very optimistic about if the Eagles draft a receiver this year, because especially in the first round, because I feel like Nick Sirianni is going to play a real hand in that. I feel like Roseman, not that he actually defers the final decision, but I think he's really going to be influenced by what Nick Sirianni said. And Nick Sirianni probably tells Howie Roseman, look, Devonta Smith's the guy. He's going to be a stud. The Eagles are going to draft Devonta Smith, and Nick Sirianni and those guys are going to develop him.
This is, to me, you have Peterson, who's, kind of the football guy, didn't have, you have now the new guy who's coming in, and it's like when you have that younger guy doing the social media stuff for you, and he's teaching you, and you're this old guy like, whoa, wait, I got to do what? I can do this, wait, I can do that, I can do it. And there's Roseman taking this all in from this young guy with all these new ideas. Like, I really felt today that Sirianni has somebody's ear, right?
He does. I feel like this is one of the reasons why they hired Nick Sirianni. Is just kind of, as you said, Mike, it's a breath of fresh air. It's something different. It's a new flavor of ice cream, as Howie Roseman would put it. It's just somebody different. He sounds a little corny, he's very excited about stuff. And again, Rob Motti nailed it on the head from the Associated Press. They didn't like Andy Reid because he was too boring. Well, this guy's too exciting, and now they're complaining. Well, what is it? And I said, maybe fans should look in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. There's three faces of, you got Bill Belichick, he wins. You've got Peterson, who was very all shucksy, he won a Super Bowl. You have Andy Reid, very boring. You can't say this guy's the guy that I want for a press conference. How does he coach? How do the players connect with him? I thought he was really a breath of fresh air today. They also, one last thing I want to get on we had John on earlier. He talked about trading up to 9 to get Patrick Surtain. If they move up, it's because they want to get Surtain. If they stay, it's just, hey, they're happy with whoever. And if they move back, I think they go offensive line.
I would agree there. I'll say this. If they move up and if they trade Patrick Surtain, I'm okay with that. John's in the know with that stuff. I also think they would trade up for a wide receiver if one becomes available. Say Jamar Chase goes 6 like we think he's going to go. But what if Kyle Pitts falls? What if Devonta Smith or Jalen Waddle are still on the board and you have your pick? You got to think about it. And I know you want to leapfrog the Cowboys. And the Cowboys, I think, are going to get Patrick Surtain anyway. But if you jump up ahead of them and draft a cornerback, if Kyle Pitts is on the board, especially if Kyle Pitts is on the board.
Right. If Pitts is on the board, and he's past 6, you got to make a call.
You got to get the best player in the draft. Bottom line, I don't care what you need, and you know what, you might need a tight end anyway, because we're still not sure what Dallas Goedert truly is. But if Kyle Pitts is going to be the All-Pro for the next 10, 15 years, you got to take him. I mean, and at least on my board, I'm no draft expert here. I have Kyle Pitts as probably the second or third best player in the draft, and third's low. Like, it's Trevor Lawrence and Kyle Pitts to me. That's it. Done.
Right. Most big boards, if you're just drafting best player available, he'd be the second pick in this draft.
Exactly. If we do best overall player, it's Kyle Pitts. So if you trade up and get him, I'm okay with that. If you draft up and take Patrick Surtain, fine, I get it. Eventually, you're going to have to replace Darius Slay. So I'm cool with that. And you're going to have a stud cornerback next to him for the next several seasons. I am totally fine with that. But I feel like receiver, pass, give Jalen Hurts a chance. That's all I'm asking. Just give him a fair shot.
And I think they will. Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, covers the NFL at Geoff Kerr, CBS. The draft 1 week from tomorrow. He'll be back on Friday. We'll break it all down here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, man. We'll talk to you then.
Sounds good. I'll try to be as fired up about rock, paper, scissors as Nick Sirianni is.
All right. He, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. He'll be back on Friday's show. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays with Geoff Kerr from CBS Sports, covers the NFL. Good stuff, good energy, good conversation. Love having it. And don't forget, I got another Sports Bash Cash code word coming up for you here at 5:55. All right, call Jenkins Heating, Air Conditioning, Installation Service, Maintenance, Plumbing, Drain Cleaning Service, 609-641-6440. Back with the sound of the day. The sound of the day next. All right, let's see what we got today. John Clayton, Paul Hudrick, Geoff Mosher, and Jeff Kerr. Good stuff today from our guests. John Clayton, the professor, said this.
And knowing that the Dallas Cowboys are likely going to take Patrick Surtain from Alabama, then you can see that Philadelphia might want to jump them because they do have the leverage now with the capital, with the trade that they made with San Francisco and Miami, and you move up a couple spots and you get what they might be determining to be the best defensive player in this draft and a corner that will go on the other side of Darius Slay and really help the defense.
So he suggests the Eagles have to jump the Cowboys. I agree with him. If they want to get the number one defensive player in the draft, that's how they have to do it. They have to move up.
Yeah, if you're not going to get the guy you want by just hoping he falls to you, no matter what draft it is, doesn't matter if it's this year, next year, whatever year. If you're targeting a specific player, you trade, you move. That's what Howie said. If we feel like there's a guy that we need to go get, we'll go get him. So, but if you're content with the draft coming to you, that's part of the reason why you stay at 12.
Well, and how the draft gets to you, it all is contingent on this pick.
Talking to some people down in Atlanta today, they're now starting to think that Arthur Blank is making that push to take a quarterback. And also, they could be doing that just to try to entice a team to try to trade up to go, whether it's going to be Detroit, Denver, somebody else, to move up and take that pick.
So that fourth pick is a really interesting one. But I would imagine the Eagles would be loving for a fourth quarterback to go at number 4.
Ideally for the Eagles, 5 quarterbacks go in the first round. At minimum, 4 is good for them.
Right, the more quarterbacks that go, the happier they are.
Yeah, and also there is way too much smoke right now around the idea of Atlanta either taking a quarterback or a team trading up to get that 4th pick for a quarterback for us to ignore at this point. It's becoming way more smoke than I ever anticipated.
Jeff Kerr. Could the Eagles draft an offensive lineman?
Isaac Seumalo, center. He is going to be the heir apparent to Jason Kelsey. I have no doubt about that. So they're going to need a guard at some point. Brandon Brooks, he's no spring chicken. He's on the north side of 30 now. So you're going to need a guy there. But Elijah Vera Tucker can start today as an NFL guard. That's how good he is. Christian Darrisaw, same thing. He can start today as a guard. They both can play tackle, but they are going to be dominant guards in this league. I would not be surprised if the Eagles went and I don't want to say they'll draft Vera Tucker at 12, but I think he's going to be there between 15 to 18. I think that's a guy you get.
So should Eagles fans be happy if they just kind of went with the safe pick? You won 4 games to get the safe pick?
Look, no one's going to be happy with the safe pick, no matter what. No matter if the safe pick is the greatest offensive lineman of all time. It's always going to be, you could have had X, Y, Z. That's how Eagle fans are.
That's funny because you're right. If he turns out to be a Hall of Famer, you were still not happy because you don't have...
You didn't get Jamar Chase.
Right, you didn't get the skill position player. Remember, you won a Super Bowl with Alshon Jeffrey, a guy you can't stand.
Alshon Jeffrey. He was pretty good in that Super Bowl. He was pretty good.
He was, but he was a guy that in the end he wasn't a stud number 1 receiver. All right, coming up, it's Weinberg Wednesday. Jay Blevins is back in the mix for the Sixers and Suns tonight. Is he going to the game? He's at the game tonight, so he'll be live from the Wells Fargo Center. I got a Sports Bash Cash code word worth $1,000 coming up in 8 seconds from now. So don't go away and enter the code word, and you can win $1,000 right now.